24-year-old Heidi Huntley claims ex-boyfriend Eric Huntley owes for half of their credit card debt.
Miss Huntley, the defendant is your former boyfriend. You've been together for quite some time, I assume, and you have one child together.
Yes.
Your complaint is that when you broke up, Mr. Huntley agreed that he would take over half of the credit card debt. He made a couple of payments and then stopped. You also claimed that he used a car that belonged to you and caused some damage to the car and vandalism to the car. You want him to take care of that. Mr. Huntley said he walked out of the house, leaving you in the house with your child. How old is your child?
My son is 7.5.
And he left with his clothes, and that's on that credit card remained in the house, and he doesn't see why in the world he should pay for it.
Yes.
And with regard to the car, his defense is that any vandalism that was done to the car was paid out by your insurance from an act of vandalism that had nothing to do with him, and you chose not to have the car fixed, but to pocket the insurance money, and therefore he's not paying for it because you already got paid for it, right?
Correct.
Correct.
Good. You lived together from when to when?
February of 2003 until October 8th of 2006.
When and why did you leave, Mr. Huntley?
The relationship just didn't work out. It was an agreed upon thing. It wasn't like I just stormed out. I mean,
okay, so you agree. So it was a civilized, orderly arrangement.
We were both unhappy.
What arrangement did you make, Mr. Huntley, with regard to the debt?
I had been paying pretty much all of the, I mean, I had a full-time job and I was going to school, making financial aid and some scholarships, and that was all going to bills while she was only going to school. For about 4 years. When I left, I was still paying the credit card bills, but it didn't take a long time to figure out that what was going on was it was an attempt to make sure I didn't have enough money to survive, and I couldn't. Right now, she's living in a 2-bedroom house with hardwood floors, with 2 cars in the driveway. She's got a college degree. I think she's had a job for a little while. I'm sleeping on my dad's couch.
The credit card bills were how much?
We have $38,000 in credit card debt over the course of our 3-year relationship. He'd been paying half the payment on all of the 5 cards, and I had also been paying half a payment on a card that is only in his name, on not my name at all. Our credit cards have both of our names. We're both joint signers on these cards. We just made the arrangement that, you know, hey, you would pay half and I would pay half the minimum payment, and that went on until September. And in September, he told me, I need to save for my own place. I have a new girlfriend, or October, I have a new girlfriend. I just bought a new truck after I lost $1,500 selling our truck that was in joint of our names. And I don't have the money to pay it. So you're just going to have to deal with it yourself. It's not my problem.
Well, you have to deal with it and he has to deal with it, because if they're joint credit cards, they're going to come after both of you.
Absolutely.
So what are you doing in court? Here.
He won't pay the credit card.
Well, they're going to come after him. They'll attach your salary, they'll attach his salary.
Well, Your Honor, I have a credit score of 760. His credit score is now 720, but when we met, it was in the 500s and mine was in the 700s. And
Miss Huntley, how many years since 2003 were you employed?
None of those years was I legally employed.
Well, you're not going to stand here in court and tell me you were illegally employed.
I went to school and I had scholarship funds. I had 8 different scholarships, of which I got about $2,800 a month take-home cash.
That you don't have to pay back?
I do have loans. I have student loans.
Of course you do. So the answer is you did not work. He worked. He provided for the household while you were living together. You have to remember, folks, you're not married. We don't have courts in this country for almost marrieds living together, trying it out. We don't have courts for that. If this was a marital situation, I would have no problem. I would say, listen, you have credit card debt, you're responsible for half, and you're responsible for half. That's it. Goodbye and good luck. But that's not the case. The truth of the matter is that if you have $38,000 worth of credit card debt from 2003 in February until 2006 in October, he paid the credit cards.
No, he didn't. He was unemployed for 6 months of that time straight.
Well, you were unemployed for 4 years. Somebody had to pay for these cars.
But I wasn't unemployed. I brought home $2,800 a month every month, except for July and August.
What did you do with it?
I paid as many bills as he did. Car payments, credit card payments, food, clothing. All kinds of stuff.
It's very, very interesting, Miss Huntley. I have no idea how you did that, because I had kids, and nobody ever gave them $2,800 a month in cash in addition to what they were getting. So you got some kind of gig going here that probably the rest of the civilized world would like to know about.
I have a 3.8 GPA, and I'm an engineering student, and I volunteer 170 hours a year.
Fabulous. What do you want me to do? You want me to say to him, what you should do is pay half the bills?
Yes.
Yeah, well, I'll say to him, what you do should be half the bills. Be nice if you paid half the bills. That's a moral judgment. These bills are in both of your names, and eventually the credit card companies who have advanced to you foolishly $38,000 in credit card expenses are going to come after both of you for the return of this money.
Your Honor, I'm making the payments because I understand how important credit is. I would like to go on with my life.
And
I'm making the payments regardless of whether he is.
Don't you, Mr. Huntley?
I do, but I only have so much money, and it's getting to the point where I have to choose.
Are you paying child support?
Yes.
No.
Oh, interesting.
No, he has not paid child support, and he has not made a payment on any credit cards since August.
Requested to make child support payments 2 weeks ago by the state.
Mr. Huntley, requested by whom?
The state.
The state, because he wouldn't pay it.
I was never asked to pay it.
Just a second.
I've been paying all these other bills.
Listen, you may be angry. You may be angry. I don't know what you're angry about. I don't know. The truth of the matter is I really don't know what you're angry about. I was going to jump down his throat when he said I was never asked to pay it, because that's not an answer. When you have a child, you're supposed to pay child support. You don't have to be asked by anybody to pay child support. Child has to eat. Both parents are responsible for that. How much are you paying in child support?
$200 a month right now.
$200 a month is not a lot of money, Mr. Huntley.
No, it's not. At the time when I was requested to make child support payments, my paychecks are $800 or $900, and she asked for $600 or $700 every 2 weeks for bills.
Well, you can't do that and pay child support.
I can't do that and
I
pay
haven't
child
asked for
support.
child support until he stopped paying on the bills.
Oh, well, but just a second. But then you did.
I only want what's fair. I only want half of our debt.
Miss Huntley, what you have to do, my dear, if you want half the debt, is you have to get married. That's what happens. That's what happens. Otherwise, you're coming into court, and there is no jurisdiction that I know of for almost marrieds. He can't pay half the credit card bills and the child support order that should be a lot more than $200 a month, quite frankly, Mr.
And it will
Huntley.
be. I put an appeal to have it raised to $640 is what he's going to end up paying, which is just enough to cover the minimum payments on the credit cards.
Well, then you shouldn't have made such extensive credit card purchases. What do you want from me? Now, the two of you chose not to get married. You chose for whatever economic reason to live without benefit of marriage. I don't know why. Maybe it had to do with your scholarships. Maybe it had to do with something else. I'm not sure. Quite frankly, I don't have the time to figure it out. But if you chose to do that, you can't come to court and say, listen, now you have to go through our assets and liabilities. If I were to go through your assets, if I were to go into your home, Miss Huntley, and look at what you have in your home, would anything in your home be the product of the purchases that were made on these credit cards?
Some things.
And did Mr. Huntley take any things out of the home when he left other than his clothes and personal effects?
No, but some of those things were also on these credit cards.
No, just a second. I don't care. I'm talking about his clothes and personal effects. I'm not talking about beds and refrigerators or washer dryers or anything else that it goes to set up a household.
No, I kicked him out and he took nothing.
Right. Well, then you pay the bill. Bye.
Juliet Vasasio is suing her ex-boyfriend, Omar Pierce, for unpaid rent and a security deposit. Omar says Juliet is angry that he went back to his wife.
Miss Vasasio, this very unhappy gentleman who's standing next to you, Mr. Pierce, used to be your boyfriend.
Yes.
Even though he was married. And you have a child together.
Yes.
Mistake number 2. And it is your claim that the two of you leased an apartment for 6 months because you claim Mr. Pierce wanted to move out of your parents' home where the two of you were living with your baby and have a place of your own. You signed the 6 months lease. He didn't really hold up his end of the rent, which you had agreed to, and then he moved out, leaving you stuck with the lease. Mr. Pierce says that you couldn't rip him from the heart of his wife and 2 sons. And that he decided to go home, and that he paid rent while he lived there, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Did I explain your position, sir?
No, I don't owe any of the money.
What?
I don't owe any money.
Oh, this is going to be harder than I thought. When did he live in your parents' house?
The first time he moved in was in May.
Of 2006?
Yes.
How old is your baby?
He's 2.5. He'll be 3 in October.
Is that your only child?
Yes.
Why would you have a baby with somebody who's married?
Because he lied and told me he wasn't married. He told me he had just separated and he was divorced from his wife 6 months prior to when I met him.
He said he was separated or divorced?
The same difference. He said...
No, it's not the same difference. Separated is not divorced.
At first, he didn't have a wife. I would have never went with him if he told me that he was married.
And when did he finally tell you he was married?
He never did. He never told me that he was married. I had to find out from his wife that he was married. And it was after I had my son.
Was he living with you?
No, he wasn't.
Why wasn't he living with you?
I don't know.
Did you ask him why we're not living together?
No.
Did you ask him why we're not married?
No, he knows that I wouldn't want to marry him. I told him, I don't want to get married. Why do I need to get married? If I live with somebody, why would I need to get married?
Well, why if you're fighting with somebody? You're right, you shouldn't marry somebody you're fighting with, right? You also shouldn't make a baby with them.
That was before I found out that he was married.
What difference does it make if he's married or not? If you don't want to get married and you're not getting along with him.
We were not fighting before that. Everything was fine before that. There was no fighting or nothing.
You mean everything was fine until you got pregnant?
Yes. Well, he was okay up until the month I had my baby.
What kind of work do you do?
I'm a receiving clerk.
Where?
I don't want to say.
In what city?
In San Marcos.
How long have you been a shipping clerk for the company that you work for now?
Close to a year.
And before that, where did you work?
Oh, I didn't work.
Huh?
I didn't work. Oh, I did work, but in numerous places.
What kind of work does the plaintiff do?
I work in the emergency room.
What kind of work does the plaintiff do?
She works in a hospital, I guess.
What do you mean you guess?
Why I see her go there. I mean, yeah, she works in a hospital. Excuse me, I don't want to be...
Yeah, don't be a smart aleck, sir. You know, you're having trouble just keeping your head above water here. And what prompted you to decide to get an apartment with him? Because now you're living with your parents and your son, right? Everything is nice. The baby has some stability, live at home, so he's got grandparents, nice. Now you know he's married. And he says, let's get an apartment together.
He's the father of my child. I'm going to give him a chance. If I'm going to want him in my son's life, I'm going to give him that chance. He told me that he was in the process already of divorcing his wife. 2 weeks before we signed our lease, before we were going to move in together, he told me that his divorce was going to be final. That obviously
So you signed the lease. Can I see the lease, please?
Yes, you may.
November of 2006 is when you started. When did he move out?
In January of 2007.
So he lived there with you for 2 months, right?
Yes.
What?
We moved in October, and I gave her rent for October.
It says that the rent is due the first date of each month beginning November 2nd.
Thank you. It's November.
Your lease started November 2nd,
Yes.
2006. Why did you move out?
I went back with my wife and kids, went home.
You went back with your wife and kids. Well, what did you expect her to do with this apartment?
Well, she told me before we even moved into the place that I can go back to my family, go back, break the lease, and go back to my family.
Just a second. She what? Say it again to me, so I believe it.
She told me that I can, if it didn't work, I could break the lease.
And go back to your wife?
Yes.
Those words never came out of a woman's mouth.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Not her mouth.
Thank you, especially with somebody with a kid.
Just a second. Don't. Look at me. Those words not only didn't come out of her mouth, they didn't come out of any woman's mouth in history. If it doesn't work out between us, you can break the lease and go back to your wife.
Yeah, because she knew how I felt about my wife and her.
What, are you crazy? Why did you sign this lease, Mr. Pierce?
Because I wanted to be free. I thought it was going to work out between me and her.
Because what?
I wanted to be free. I wanted, because we would have fun. I thought it would be, work out between me and Juliet.
So you wanted to have fun. You couldn't have fun in her parents' house.
We agreed to move out so we could be together.
You wanted to be free.
Yeah, well,
you wanted to be able to drink and smoke and do what you wanted to do and have a good time. You couldn't do that at her parents' house. And her parents probably looked at you like I'm looking at you and saying, why? I raised this nice girl and she brings me home a bum. Why? What happened? Mr. Pierce, you have a responsibility to pay her for the remainder of the lease, your half. Do you want me to explain why to you, sir?
No.
No?
Well, because I don't owe her any money. When I stayed there, she said that it was okay, because she knew I had to support my other kids.
When I was a kid, my grandmother used to tell me that, God one day God gave you a heart, one day a soul, one day you got a brain, one day you got... He was absent. He was absent. You picked the wrong day to be absent, Mr. Pierce. Listen to what I'm saying to you, sir. You have 3 children. You made 3 children. You can't afford to have 3 children. you probably can't even afford to take care of yourself. So you have to find some other hobby other than having children. That's number one. Number two, sir, look over here. You signed a lease. That has meaning. Whether you pay taxes or not is not my issue. Signing this contract is my issue. Do you understand, sir?
Yes.
Signing this contract obligated her to pay this rent. Now, if they can't come after you because they can't find you, that is a problem. Do we understand each other, Mr. Pierce?
Yes, ma'am.
You understand me loud and clear now, Mr. Pierce?
Yes, ma'am.
Good. I'm glad now we understand each other, sir. So when you sign a lease for 6 months with the mother of your child and take her out of a home where she's living relatively comfortably, rent-free, and then you get an epiphany and want to be near your other baby's mother, that doesn't mean you are absolved from paying her for the rent. Do you understand, sir? If Uncle Sam can't find you, I can. Do we understand each other?
Yes, ma'am.
Very good. The rent is $825. According to your complaint, he was supposed to pay $400. $400 times 4 equals $1,600. That's for the 4 months remaining on the lease after you moved out, sir. Do you understand?
Yes.
Goodbye. Judgment for the plaintiff. That's right.
Charnita Christopher is suing her former friend and child care provider, Vashni Dixon, for her share of money paid to Vashni by the state. Vashni is countersuing for unpaid child care fees.
Miss Christopher, Miss Dixon was a friend of yours.
Yes,
and it
ma'am.
is your claim that at some point she needed some assistance. You needed some assistance with child care, and the state was paying for your child care costs.
Yes, ma'am.
You engaged Miss Dixon to watch your children with the following arrangement: that she would share those child care responsibilities with your aunt, and then they would split the check. It is your claim that when Miss Dixon got the check, she kept the whole check for herself, and you want half the check so that you can give it to your aunt.
Yes, ma'am.
Miss Dixon says that there was no aunt, that she watched the children, but that you wanted her to split the county check. You would keep half, and she would keep half. And she felt that that was very unfair since she had the responsibility of watching the children. She has a counterclaim, and her counterclaim is nonsense. Her counterclaim wants you to pay the difference between what the county paid for child care and what she thinks she deserves for child care, the overage, because that's what it says in the contract from the state. Well, that's not the contract you had with her, Miss Dixon.
When she told me, we made the agreement.
Miss Dixon, that wasn't your agreement that she was going to pay you extra.
She was supposed to pay me $4 an hour. The state was supposed to pay that to tell me that they wouldn't pay all of that. It's her responsibility to pay.
It's not her responsibility.
How is it not her responsibility?
Because I say so. Because that wasn't your contract with her. Now, how many children do you have?
3.
How long have you been receiving child care money from the state for the 3 children?
Approximately a year.
Starting when?
It started again March 27th of 06.
And where were you working in March?
I wasn't working. It was for me to be able to look for employment at that time.
Well, did you find employment?
I found employment July 3rd. I was hired at Glamour Shots.
So you're telling me from March 27th until July 3rd, the state was paying you to look for a job?
Yes.
To watch your
ma'am.
children?
Yes, ma'am.
When did she start to babysit for you?
August 7th, 2006.
And where were you working at that time?
I wasn't working.
Well, what happened to the job that you started in July?
Oh, August, Glamour Shots. I'm sorry, Glamour Shots.
Are you still working there?
No, ma'am.
When did you stop working there? It's very easy to find out by calling them. When
August
did you
15th.
stop?
August 15th. I have my check stubs.
All right, so you worked there for a month.
Yes, ma'am.
And why did you leave there?
Because they weren't giving me enough hours.
Well, so you left that job because they weren't giving you enough hours, and you went to the situation where you weren't working at all.
Yes, ma'am. There was a lot of other issues with that job.
So the county wasn't really getting a great bang for their buck by paying for your 3 children for daycare while you're looking for a job, and you had a job for a total of 1 month when you quit because they weren't giving you enough hours. Something doesn't sound right there, Miss Christopher. So she started working August 7th, and now a week later you're not working. So what are you doing when she's watching your children?
Out looking for work.
What does that mean?
I have to go to the workforce center, and they work with me to help me look for work.
Well, how many days a week do you go to the center?
It could be 4, sometimes 5.
Could it be 3?
It depends on what my job counselor...
When did you go to work?
Where did I go to work?
When? First is when?
I haven't. I'm looking for work right now. My children are not in child care right now at all.
So she started to work on August 7th. And when did you stop working?
I left her house on September 4th, I believe.
So you were there for 4 weeks.
Yeah.
How many hours a day did you watch the children, or did you live in her house?
She'd leave around maybe 10 o'clock in the morning, and she wouldn't get back till like 8 o'clock at night.
What about this aunt? Do you know anything about an aunt?
I never heard anything about her aunt watching her kids before this.
Where's the aunt?
She's at home.
She's not here?
No.
Well, how do you expect to prove to me that somebody else babysat for your children?
I have the proof.
Show me. What kind of proof are you showing me?
Oh, it's the hours that my aunt kept the children. She typed this up. She has the license.
I don't accept that, Miss Christopher. That's hearsay.
Okay. Well, that's what I have.
Well, your case is dismissed. My dear, she got a check for watching your children. You have no proof that somebody else watched your children. Ridiculous. Your case is dismissed, that's all.
Pamela Beverly is suing the mother of her daughter's schoolmate, Rhonda Mayo, for medical bills and pain and suffering. Pamela claims 12-year-old Jessica Mayo injured her daughter at school.
Miss Beverly, this case really involves your daughter.
Yes, ma'am.
You weren't there when this incident happened, but it is your claim that the defendant's daughter injured your daughter. You want her to pay the medical bills.
Yes, ma'am.
But you weren't there. You don't know. Let's have the girls up and the mom seated, please. Tell me your name.
Crystal Beverly.
How old are you, Crystal?
13. Jessica May, I'm 12 years old.
Okay, Crystal, why don't you tell me when this happened? What date?
I think March 27th.
Were you friends?
Yes.
How long have you been friends?
Since the first day of school.
So since September?
Yes.
And this was March, so you've been friends for a long time?
Yes, ma'am.
You like each other?
Yes, ma'am.
So tell me what happened.
We were walking down to the bus for dismissal, and when we were stopping off the sidewalk, she had booty bumped me, and I fell.
Now, what is a booty bump?
It's when you bump somebody with your butt, you go like this.
Just like that?
Yes, if she did it harder, and then that caused me to fall.
Show me.
We were down from the sidewalk, she went like that, and I fell. And then she walked over to the sign that said Crittenton, and I laid there crying, and then one of my other friends came up to school and helped me get to the bus.
That's okay.
And you had to have surgery on your kneecap?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, let's hear your version of what happened.
We were coming down the stairs of the school in the afternoon. We were going to the bus stop. Then I gave her a booty bump, and we were still talking and laughing and walking. Then she tripped over her own footstep.
That's not true.
So you're telling me that you gave her a booty bump?
Yes.
You went like that?
Yes.
You weren't angry with her?
No.
And you continued to talk?
Yes, we were still talking and laughing and walking.
And it was later that she fell?
Yes, and she fell over her own foot.
Would you step up, please? Miss Beverly, I want you to tell me the exact conversation you had with your daughter when she got home.
It was on March the 24th, Your Honor, and she told me that they were walking to the bus stop and Jessica booty bumped her and she fell on her knee. I thought it was just a bad sprain, so I didn't take her to the emergency room until the day after.
You have the medical report, please?
Just the medical report.
What were your unreimbursed medical expenses?
It was $1,083.
All right, Miss Mayo, why don't you stand up with your daughter?
Your Honor, may I say something else?
Yes.
The day after I came from the emergency room, before I spoke to Miss Mayo, I spoke to Jessica to see where the story's the same. Jessica told me the exact same thing. She booty bumped Crystal and she fell and hurt her knee.
Is that right?
That's not true.
Okay. You have anything you want to say to me?
Yes, ma'am. When Jessica had told me that her and Crystal were playing at the bus stop and that Crystal had fallen, I said, "Oh, I'm sorry to hear that." I didn't know how serious it was until after Mrs. Beverly spoke with me on the phone. And she did tell me that Jessica and Crystal were playing and Crystal fell.
Well, they were. There's no question in my mind that your daughter did not intend to cause injury to her friend. Right?
Right.
But sometimes when you fool around, that happens. I mean, there's no issue that your daughter did not intentionally harm Miss Mayo's little girl. But they were fooling around, and she gave her a
tap. Yes, a bump.
And she fell. And she didn't fall afterwards. She's making up. She fell then. She didn't mean to hurt her. It wasn't an intentional thing. It was, as Crystal said when she first started, an accident. That's the way you described it, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Because you lost your balance when she gave you that push.
Yes, ma'am.
Right? Okay. That, Miss Mayo, suggests to me that you should be more than willing to contribute to the unreimbursed medical expenses that your daughter's fooling around caused. Because but for the fact that she gave her a nudge, she would not have tripped and fallen, and she would not have had this injury. Certainly, you are not entitled to pain and suffering, Miss Beverly, from the defendant, because I don't believe that this was an intentional act. I think that these two young girls were friends. I believe that in all probability, your daughter has done this booty bumping ever to other people.
Yes, ma'am.
Fortunately, nobody got hurt. Do you understand, Miss Beverly?
Yes, ma'am, I do.
Okay. Judgment for the plaintiff in the amount of $1,083. Thank you.
Sandra Allen says former employers Dasher Lindsay and Ralph Isles owe for babysitting fees. The defendants are countersuing, claiming Sandra made false accusations to Child Protective Services.
Miss Allen, you did babysitting for the defendants.
Correct.
On several different occasions, several different periods of time. And it is your claim that you are owed some wages because you were let go from your job.
Yes.
And you had worked 30 hours.
Correct.
The defendants, while they seem to acknowledge that you were owed wages at the time you left, they say they really owe you nothing because you made a false claim to Child Protective Services about the way that they care for their children, and they are counterclaiming in the amount of $3,000 because of what they say that you put them through. Miss Lindsay, when and where did you find Miss Allen to babysit for your children?
Well, Miss Allen was our children's first babysitter.
And you have 2 children?
We have 3, ma'am.
How long did she babysit for you?
This last time was for 9 months.
And prior to that?
It was off and on for a number of months.
And she was a good babysitter?
Yes, ma'am.
Took good care of your children? You
Yes,
felt
ma'am.
comfortable about leaving her with the children?
We trusted her, yes, ma'am.
Good. Miss Allen, then I'm going to come to you. I want you to tell me what happened that caused you to call Child Protective Services and when?
On numerous occasions, the kids would not have enough to eat. They would ask me, can I have some more? I was like, well, there's no more food. And I would offer them, like, okay, give me $100. I'll be more than happy to go to the commissary. It's base where the food's a whole lot cheaper. And, you know, I'll get the food and stuff like that for them. No big deal. No. We're going to go out. We have our monthly budget. And every end of the month, they go to Sam's and everything, come back with the same thing. And we do the same thing over. The kids' shoes were too small. I purchased a pair of shoes for the 4-year-old girl. We had to go up 2 sizes, and that was in the end of '06. I bought the shoes for her, and I started working for them in August. So that time, her shoes were too small. We bought the baby shoes. She was not a year at the time, and the kids were not getting baths. The dad would go out of town. Every other week, he'd go out of town. No big deal. Mom said it's going to be a long week. Could you give the kids a bath? And I would. But when Dad comes home at 5:30, I would not give the kids a bath. I come in at 10:30 in the morning. The kids had the same clothes on that I put them in the day before. I was like, did you guys get a bath? No, Miss Sandra, could we get a bath? So I was like, well, it's time to get dressed, so we'll just change clothes, and we'll just go out and do our stuff and everything.
What did you tell Child Protective Services when you called them?
That the kids were being neglected and weren't being supervised properly.
Go ahead.
On one occasion, Miss Dasher told me personally that the neighbor down the street came in and told her that the oldest son was sitting, they have a 2-story house, and the son was sitting out on his window throwing things out. And the screen's missing, so he was throwing things out of his window.
What kind of work do you do, Miss Lindsay?
I'm a cook.
For whom?
For a company called Sodexo.
You work full-time?
Yes, ma'am.
And you, sir?
Systems analyst for the same company.
Well, you both have good jobs. You've been working for a while for this company?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you have any financial problems?
No.
Miss Allen, before you called Child Protective Services, did you discuss with Miss Lindsay and Mr. Lyles your concerns?
No, I did not.
You did not. Who is this lady?
It's my mother.
Would you step up, please? Tell me your last name. When, if ever, did your daughter start to discuss with you the concerns she had about these children?
It was last year. She was seeing different things, and in our area they have a lot of yard sales, and she asked me if I would go out, if I could look for clothes in the children's size and shoes because they were too small, or the winter time. What she said, I'm not sure if it was the 4-year-old didn't have clothes that would fit her for the winter, so I was trying to find jeans and turtlenecks and stuff. And she would bring them over to the house sometime, and I would fix some lunch and everything, because she would say the cup of noodles, that was all they would be eating for lunch, and the sodium in that soup thing was kind of high for a child. So,
did she discuss with you before she called Child Protective Services?
No, but she told me that, something needed to be done about what was going on, and I told her, do what she needed to do.
Okay. Do you have the report from Child Protective Services? I'd like to see it.
Yes, ma'am. I have two, the original when they first came out on the 20th, and the second from the actual caseworker.
How many times did the caseworker visit you in the 2-week period between the date that the report was received and the day they closed the case?
Just twice. The first time, which is A, and then the second time, which is B, when they closed the case. Because on the first visit, she stated that there was nothing but discrepancies in the claims, the allegations that was made.
Okay. Miss Lindsay or Mr. Lyles, do you have any motive for Miss Allen to have placed this call after the years that she spent with you taking care of your children?
Possibly, yes, ma'am.
Well, I'd like to hear what you think the possible motive is.
That Monday before the 20th, I believe it was the 16th, Miss Allen came in, normal day. I had spoken to her in regards to, we was paying her extra stipend for gas because she would pick our son up from school, so we give her extra money on top of her pay each week. Well, gas prices in our area were rising, and she came to me and she stated, Miss Dasher, the news said by Memorial Day, gas prices are going to be sky high. Can I please get more gas money? And I said, well, how much do you want? Because I was previously paying her $20 extra a week for gas. She said $30, and I said, fine, no problem. Okay, that was taken care of. Right before I was getting ready to go to work that day, I had reminded Miss Allen that we were soon to be putting our two oldest children, the 4- and the 5-year-old, in private school, in which we was going to be paying for private school, and the only one that would be left would be our 2-year-old. And once we're paying for private school, we wouldn't be able to pay her the same amount that we pay her currently for her nanny services.
Well, how much were you paying her an hour?
$7 an hour during the week, and if she worked on the weekends, it would be $9 an hour, plus the
So you
stipend
wanted
for
to pay her
gas.
less than $7 an hour?
I didn't want to.
No, we were cutting the hours back. That was what we were telling her.
Oh, you were just cutting her hours back?
Yes, it was more like a pre-notice to possibly a 2-week notice when the children started private school. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Yes, and what did she say?
She didn't state much. She said, well, that's fine. By August, I planned on having moved out of my parents' home.
So she wasn't upset about it?
She didn't seem upset now.
She wasn't upset about that, so that's not a reason. I don't see any reason that she would have, quite frankly, Miss Lindsay, of making this phone call unless she had some legitimate concerns over the 3 children. And the fact that the state didn't find any gross abnormality in your house doesn't mitigate the fact that she felt as if you and your husband may have been a little overwhelmed with full-time jobs and 3 little children, working very hard. You have financial things in the works, private school and all that stuff. Whatever it was, I don't get from Miss Allen that she was being vindictive about anything. You have a reason she might call?
I mean, my sister told me that she was going through personal issues.
Well, first of all, that's hearsay. Second of all, going through personal issues would not necessarily mean she would take it out on you.
Well, it doesn't make sense that she would call. The things that were going on did not happen. I mean, she put our kids in danger.
How did she put your kids in danger?
Because Child Protective Services could have took them away.
Well, they could have if they found that they were substantially neglected or abused. They absolutely could have, but we don't discourage people in this country if they have legitimate concerns from making a report to Child Protective Services so that somebody can come out and take a look at a situation and make sure everything is right. Problem is, too many people don't do anything. And unless I find that there was some motivation other than legitimate concern for the children's safety, I'm dismissing your counsel claiming she's going to get the wages that were owed to her. Her mother seems to say, who is a lady that I assume you knew.
Yes, ma'am, we did.
That her daughter had confided in her previously that she was concerned about the children.
She never confided in us. Up until that day, Miss Allen and I had never had any problems communicating.
You may not have had any problems. Do you remember when she bought your 4-year-old shoes?
She bought bought my 2-year-old shoes.
Or your 2-year-old shoes. Do you remember when she did that?
Yes.
Okay. Do you know why she did that?
I had just bought my 2-year-old shoes. She
Yeah,
did
we
it
have
because
the 2 pairs of shoes.
Yes.
It is unlikely that she would have spent her money, the hard-earned money that the $7 an hour, which is the minimal
She didn't have
amount.
any bills.
What?
She didn't have any bills.
I have bills.
She didn't have any bills, so she should spend the money on your children?
No,
We never
she liked
asked
doing
her
things
to.
for our children. She took them to McDonald's. She did things for them. That was
So she was a really good caregiver.
Yes, she was.
We're not
Well,
denying
then
She had no right to
something-
call Child Protective
Yes,
Services.
she did.
There was nothing wrong with the way we
That's
raised
the
our
way,
children.
that's your perception. But if she's the kind of caregiver that you say she is, to her eye, these children were not being adequately cared for while in your care. And before the state takes children away, there has to be some overriding reason, because they got plenty of children in foster care. So if it's a question of children not getting more than noodle soup or not getting a bath every day, they're not going to remove children from a home. But that doesn't mean somebody who loves the children, as she clearly did according to you, should tolerate what she perceives as neglect. So your counterclaim is dismissed. You owe her $226 salary and $30 for gas. Hey, that's all.
Maria Prieto claims her son's former friend, James Alfter, started a fire in her home while trying to grow marijuana.
Ms. Prieto, you rented a house to the defendant.
That's correct.
And it is your claim that he is responsible for a fire in your home that resulted in damage. Some of the damage was covered by insurance, but a great deal of it was not covered by insurance, and you want him to pay the balance.
That's correct.
Your out-of-pocket expenses. Mr. Alfter?
Mm-hmm.
Is that the way you pronounce your name?
Yes, ma'am.
You look petrified. Are you scared of me?
No.
You should be.
Yeah, a little bit.
Mr. Alfter says that your homeowner's insurance should have covered whatever losses there were. He wasn't doing anything wrong, and it was just an accident. That's your defense.
Yes.
Your Honor, I disagree.
Just. How old are you, sir?
20.
When did you move out of your home?
I've been on my own since I was about 18.
And how have you been taking care of yourself?
I work.
For whom?
Family business.
What kind of business?
Construction. Do concrete work.
Whose business is it?
It's my grandfather's.
Who else works there?
The crew, my dad, my brothers.
So it's a big business?
Yeah.
It's a lucrative business?
Yeah.
How much? Yes, try yes.
Yes.
How much do you get paid?
$30 an hour.
And you work 7 days a week, 6 days a week, 5 days a week?
40-hour weeks.
So you've got money in the bank?
I'm all right.
What?
I said I'm all right. Yes.
You have a car?
Yes.
Shape? Do you work out?
Yes.
You work out at home or in a gym?
The gym.
You have a gym membership?
Yes.
I ask you all these questions, sir, because I'm trying to find out a little bit about you. Because this complaint says, Mr. Alfter, that the fire that started in Miss Prieto's house, on what date?
September the 12th.
On what date did he move into the house?
He moved in July 1st.
Was started because in your bedroom, right?
In master bedroom, correct.
People usually sleep in the master bedroom, right?
Yes.
How many bedrooms were there in the house?
5.
How many people were living in the house?
Just 2.
You and who else?
Me and my roommate.
Male or female?
Male.
So that those were 2 bedrooms. You don't spend the night with your roommate, right? You each have your own bedroom, right?
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
But I guess you didn't want you or your roommate to get the master bedrooms, because then it would be unequal, so that you each stayed in other bedrooms.
Yes.
And you were using your master bedroom to grow marijuana. You actually hadn't brought in the plants yet, according to the complaint and the answer, but it was all set up with a whole bunch of lights, right?
Yes, there's equipment.
I mean, you weren't planning on shooting a film in there, were you?
No.
You were going to grow marijuana.
Yes.
What were you going to do with it when you grew it?
Well, I have anxiety, and I was going to try to get my card, cannabis card.
You have anxiety?
Yeah.
You ain't seen nothing yet. Your parents are alive?
Yes.
Did they know you were coming here today?
Yes.
Did they know that 10 million people were going to be watching you today?
Yes.
Did they offer you any warnings, sir?
Yes.
And I know that it's not relevant to the case, but I, because I am a mother, would like to know what your parents said to you.
They told me I better learn my lesson.
Both of them.
Yes.
Sounds like my kind of people. Who do you expect to pay for these damages that weren't covered by Miss Prieto's insurance as a result of your lunacy in trying to start a marijuana farm in her house?
Myself.
So why didn't you just pay her, sir? Why did you force her to come here? I mean, I know that she looks lovely and she appears to be a very nice lady, but why didn't you just say, I'm really sorry, I acted like an idiot, I'm 20 years old, I'm not fully grown up yet. Just help me out here. It'll never happen again. I'm going to cut my hair so I can see. All of those things.
The sum, that amount that she wanted was pretty high. I thought the insurance would have covered it, but I was going to pay the deductible.
Yeah, but the insurance company didn't, for instance, pay for all the landscaping around the house that was singed.
But when I moved in the house, the landscaping wasn't too caught up.
May not have been too caught up. What about the fact that you didn't have the use of her house for a while?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I know, that's my fault.
So who should pay for that?
Myself.
Yes, ma'am. Can I see the bills, please?
Sure. And I have pictures also.
Should have listened to your parents, Mr. After. Father's a pretty tough guy?
Yeah.
Are you using your real name today, sir?
Yes.
Is your father's last name the same as yours?
Yes.
Look what you did to her house. Bird, look what he did to her house. You planned on smoking an awful lot of weed, sir, for your anxiety. Why don't you go to a therapist?
I don't know.
Well, I would try a therapist before I would start farming again. Who helped you with all this, sir?
I did it myself.
What about your roommate?
No, well, he helped a little bit.
Was he going to be your partner?
No.
What does he do for a living?
He works.
For whom?
He does construction, too.
For your father?
No.
Your Honor, can I say something?
Please.
Okay, as far as all that equipment he purchased, and it was worth over supposedly $6,000, and he didn't have money to pay the rent. So he had money to go out there and buy all that, plus, start his little lab thing. But on the other hand, he's making $30 an hour, and he could have just stepped up to the plate and said, I'm going to pay you. Even payments. I said, can you make payments? And he's like, yeah, I will. Never followed through.
He's very anxious because he's not smart. And unless he gets smarter, he's going to remain anxious. Mm-hmm. Do you understand?
Mm-hmm.
Say sorry.
Sorry.
Not to me.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Judgment for the plaintiff in the amount of $5,000, that's all.
Michael Kroman claims ex-girlfriend Jennifer Buck had him falsely arrested for an assault. Jennifer is countersuing for emotional distress and harassment.
Mr. Kroman, the defendant is your former girlfriend. You and Miss Buck have a child together. And it is your claim that sometime in 2005, she filed false assault charges against you, which caused you to retain an attorney, lose wages, suffer. You want her to compensate you.
Correct.
Ms. Buck says she told the truth when she filed for this protective order. As a matter of fact, the protective order was granted to her for a year. She is counterclaiming because she says you're the one who continues to harass her, and she's going to tell me why. How old is your child?
She just turned 2 in January.
And when did this incident happen that formed the basis of the order of protection?
November 10th, 2005.
How long had you been separated at that point?
Almost 2.5 months.
Where did the incident occur?
In my house.
What time?
It was around 7 in the morning.
What were you doing at his house at 7 in the morning?
It wasn't 7. It was about 5:30. We had been out that evening, and he invited me back to his house, so we were at his house.
You had been out together in the evening?
Yes.
Is that right?
We met up later in the evening, yes.
Where?
At a bar.
Okay, so what happened at 5:30?
She had come back. We had been involved in a relationship for, a year and a half, and we had been intimate that night, and I had to go to work then that morning. I was tired. I needed to get some sleep, so I asked her to leave. She did not want to leave. She basically wasn't satisfied and wanted me to continue. I told her I had to get some sleep. I asked her to leave. So that is when she left. When she left, she walked into the garage, knocked over a set of poker chips. I heard a loud noise, so I followed her. And at that time, she was walking out of the garage. I was tired. I wanted to get to sleep. I wanted to make sure she left. So I approached her. I went to put my hand on her. And as I did that, she turned into me. When that happened, she fell over. Immediately, I apologized and I asked to help her up. After I helped her up, I gave her a hug and apologized, and then I went inside and she got in her car.
All right, that's the basis for your application for protective order, that incident?
Yes, but that's not how it happened.
Now you tell me your version of the incident.
Okay, we did get into an argument. I was leaving. I did knock off the poker chips off the table. I continued to keep walking. I never stopped at all. All of a sudden, he comes behind me, pushes me, and I fall from the garage onto the driveway. I fell on my complete left side. I was crying. He did not offer to help me up, did not apologize. I got up. I was crying. I asked him to apologize, and I left. I went home. I didn't tell anybody what happened. A couple days later, family members found out and told me to go file. So I went and filed charges on him.
Okay. So you filed for a protective order based upon this incident. And what happened when you went to court, Mr. Krollman?
Well, actually, I was going out of town the following weekend, and she had driven by and found out that I was home. So she called the cops, and they came and picked me up. I spent the night in downtown.
Okay.
So I got a lawyer the next day. And when we went to court, the charges ended up being dismissed.
You say that there was a protective order issued for 1 year.
Correct. We went to court in December for a CPO, civil protection order. It's a permanent restraining order against the temporary restraining order, per se.
Right. Well,
so
what happened with that?
That was granted December 19th of 2005.
Can I see it, please?
Yes. I'm sorry, it's December 21st.
So in Ohio, you can have a civil protective order as opposed to a criminal proceeding pending.
Correct.
Okay. Well, Mr. Krollman, you have already had a civil hearing on this matter, sir. Do you understand that?
Yes.
And the court in that hearing on December 19th, 2005, made findings. And one of the findings that the court made was that your actions caused her to be injured on November 10th, right?
Right.
Then you can't sue her, sir. I mean, if that's the incident that you're suing her over, you can't sue her.
They just basically said that there was no evidence supporting the facts that I caused those injuries. I have a couple of things, if I may.
Just a second,
Sure.
though. The court says, inasmuch as petitioner's testimony about hitting the driveway because of the respondent's conduct is in part corroborated by the respondent, that's you, the court finds that the petitioner is a credible witness on that topic. So the court credited her version of the events. I don't sit as an appellate court. For that court, the same burden of proof exists in the two courts. There's already been a finding in that court with regard to your conduct, sir. With regard to that, the matter is what we call in legalese res judicata. I don't go back and look at facts again. They dismissed the case and sealed it criminally. Civilly, they found you liable, and they issued a civil protective order for a year. I'm prepared to hear what you have to say. If it's relevant, sir, I just told you what the law is. That's the law. We're not going to make new law here.
Okay.
You got it?
Sure.
Go ahead.
Okay. Basically, the whole reason that I believe all of this came out is in October, a month prior, I had filed for custody.
Did you tell that to the judge?
Yes.
In this proceeding?
Yes.
So the judge heard you?
Following that, she filed, a month later, she filed for that motion.
No, that's not true, sir. You're missing something. You filed for custody in October. You got together November 10th. She fell outside on November 10th. That's intervening. Go.
That same week that the charges were filed, she also sent me an email stating that let's check to see if either of us have a criminal record. All of this in lieu of her trying to build up a case for custody since she knew I'd filed for custody.
Well, listen to me. Mr. Krollman, look at me. Just for my own information. Why did you file for custody in October, sir?
Because she would not let me see my daughter unless it was just to talk about us. It was only, I'll let you talk about us and then I'll let you see your daughter.
If that's true, terrible. Because she's got to understand this, a child is entitled to know both parents. She may not care for you anymore. That's not the child's problem. And sometimes women don't get that. They have to get it. Some judge has to tell them that those are the rules. However, sir, you filed for custody in October. You got together again in November. And I guarantee you that you said things in your application for custody that she didn't like, right?
Probably. I'm sure we both did.
And then she was trying to gather ammunition about you after you filed for custody, right?
Correct.
That's fair game, Mr. Krollman. So you have no case here because that's already been decided by another court. Now, You want to proceed with your counterclaim?
Yes.
I got 30 seconds to hear the nonsense.
Okay. Mr. Coleman is an alcoholic. He's obviously had disorderly conduct while intoxicated.
And how long have you known that?
Ever since I met him.
Well, that's your problem. That's your bad judgment, not only to hook up with somebody you say is an alcoholic, but to make a baby with them. But you did.
It's true.
And child is entitled to know both parents.
It's true.
Good. Now, let's go.
He had supervised visitation during this custody proceeding, and now he's not allowed in the bar as part of our agreement when he has her for visitation.
Fine. But he has her for visitation.
Correct.
Good. Which means that the court found that he was a reasonable enough guy to have unsupervised visits.
Correct.
Right? Despite what you said.
Correct.
So the court found that you were not a credible witness. Because when you had a trial on the issue of custody and visitation, did you have hearings with regard to custody and visitation?
Yes.
And were you opposed to him having unsupervised visits?
Yes.
The court did not believe you as to the reasons why, because the court ultimately granted him unsupervised visits.
We settled.
You only settled because your lawyer said he's going to get unsupervised visits. Listen, I was in the business 25 years. I know the game. If you thought you were winning, you wouldn't have settled. That's not the way women play the game. What else?
He harasses me. I had the restraining order, and this is a stack of emails he has sent me through then. I've caught him following me to the doctor's office where I take my daughter. He continues to sue me regardless of what's happening. I have 4 pending court cases outside of this court.
What are the 4 pending court cases?
He sued me for money when we were together. His mother's suing me for money.
Did his mother give you money?
Yeah, she paid a couple car payments for me.
So his mother gave you money?
Yes.
She's entitled to sue you for money. What other case?
We had a court case Monday, and he failed to show up. He was trying to get me in contempt of child support. He failed to show up. The judge dismissed him.
What do you mean he was trying to get you in contempt for child support? I don't know what that means. What does that mean?
We share medical bills, basically. So she hasn't paid me half the medical bills, so I took it to court.
Have you paid the medical bills you're supposed to?
Yes.
You have?
Yes.
Oh, well, then I assume that the case would be dismissed, and probably with prejudice.
He wanted medical payments up until the time she was born. So since we were together up until she was 9 months old, the judge didn't see that was appropriate.
Keep going. What are the other lawsuits? You said 4.
Right. So we had the court case on Monday, the 2 lawsuits that his mother and him have against me, and then we have another one objecting an administrative hearing where I get to claim her on tax exemptions every year.
Okay. How much do you pay for child support?
I was paying $204 every 2 weeks.
And who do you live with?
I live by myself with my daughter.
And you work?
Yes.
Who pays for daycare?
I do.
Solely?
Yes.
What does it cost you for daycare?
$380 a month.
Well, Mr. Coleman, if I were judge hearing the case and you were paying $100 a week support and she's paying for daycare, I wouldn't let you claim the child as a tax deduction either. I'm just telling you, that's gratuitous advice. If she's paying $380 for child care a month and she lives by herself with her child and half of all of the expenses are attributed to the child, then your $100 a week doesn't cut it for 50% of support. So I would just gratuitously give up on that one. Listen, the fact that you don't like each other anymore is unfortunate. If you liked each other, you'd still be together. You did a very dumb thing in making a child together. You picked a guy who you say is an alcoholic. Not too swift, but he's yours, and he's your daughter's, and he's entitled to see her, and she's the mother of your child, and she's with her a lot, Mr. Coleman. And if you were a nice guy, you wouldn't want to stress out the person whose primary responsibility it is to take care of your child. Do you understand that?
Yes.
If you do that, it's just vindictive, not smart, and certainly not in your daughter's best interest. I'm just telling you, just not smart. It's petty and stupid. The fact that she filed for this protective order, nonsense. It was nonsense. I know what happened. She went like this. She didn't accidentally dump your poker chips. She went like that. She was angry. She knows it. I know it. She knows that I know it. That doesn't give you license to push her, which you did. Does it require a protective order? Were there other acts of violence in your relationship? I don't know the answer to that question. It's over. Put a period. Move on positively. You have to live together for the next 16 years. They can either be happy 16 years or miserable 16 years. Your child is 2, right?
Right.
It's up to you. You're both young people. You have a chance to move on and be happy.
Can I add something, Your Honor?
Yes.
Because of things that have happened in the past, that was the first time that I've filed anything. I've called the cops several times. He's taken my daughter. I've had to call the cops to get her back from his mother. He's thrown things at me, broke a mirror, shoved me in the closet. I had to call the cops when we went on vacation.
Was this all before November of 2005?
Yes, it was.
And yet you went to bed with him in November of 2005. You met him up at a bar. Nobody grabbed you and brought you back to the house, right?
True.
Okay. You don't get points for genius.
True.
Goodbye.
True.
Cases are dismissed.
Geraldine Brady says her daughter and son-in-law, Cassie and Cliff Yelvington, falsely accused her of abusing their daughter. The defendants are countersuing for charges filed by Geraldine.
Miss Brady, this young lady is your daughter.
Yes, ma'am.
And this is your husband.
Yes, sir.
According to your complaint, some time ago, your daughter and her husband had a small baby. That baby was removed from their custody by the state because of abuse, and the baby was placed in your custody.
Yes, ma'am.
You had her for approximately a year?
20 months, Your Honor.
And after 20 months, there was a reunification process, and she was ultimately returned to her parents.
Yes, Your Honor.
You now have that child and another child.
Yes, ma'am.
Your complaint is that there came a point where your daughter and son-in-law made some false allegations about you, which required you, because you have a teaching position, to retain an attorney in order to dispute those allegations. And you want them to pay for that attorney and for the emotional distress that you went through from something. Your daughter and her husband say that there came a point when they were concerned over something that their daughter had told them when you were visiting with her, and they had every right to report that. And they are counterclaiming because they say that you have embarked upon a course of trying to interfere with the reunification process by making allegations against the Child Protective Services. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. When was the child originally removed from your custody?
January 13th of 2005.
How old was she?
She was approximately 3 months old.
And what was the nature of the abuse that she suffered at 3 months old?
Some people that we thought were friends, and their youngest daughter was going through and put bite marks on our child.
Over what period of time?
A week or two.
You pled guilty to abuse or neglect?
Neglect.
And you understand that you neglected her?
Yes.
As did you?
I wasn't there. I was at work. I was working out of town for the period that this had happened.
The entire time?
It had happened within a week. I was out of town for the whole week.
Now, when the child was with you, did the parents visit?
Yes, ma'am.
At your house?
Initially, they had supervised visitation at my house, and due to the deteriorating situation, I asked for their visitation to be moved to a visitor center.
Well, that's part of their counterclaim, that if you hadn't forced the visitation to be at a visitation center, they might have been reunified with their child earlier. So I would like you to tell me, Miss Brady, what caused you to report this deteriorating situation?
They were coming over to my house, and I was allowing them wide open visitation. They could come, sit comfortably. I fed them. I permitted them to have any length of visitation they wanted. That was approximately June of 2005. Cliff went into court and claimed that he was paying child support to me, and I had not received any child support from them whatsoever. Also, when they came, they were bringing some people over with them. I didn't mind his family members, immediate family members, like his sisters and Kaylee's little cousins, but they started bringing strangers over.
Who would you bring over to the house?
My cousin.
Why would you do that?
We checked with her first. We told her that we were going to bring over my niece and my cousin, and she
Why
said
would
she
you
didn't
bring
have a problem.
anybody?
Because she would not come over down to Orlando so that my family could see my daughter, and my family wanted to see my daughter because they hadn't seen her since she was born.
Just a minute. What does that have to do with little cousins?
It's not. She was like 13 years old.
So what? This is for you and your wife. Visitation is for you and your wife. How many cousins did you bring to the visitor center?
We didn't take anybody to the visitation center because it was done during the week whenever everybody was working.
Right. So Miss Brady was taking care of business that you should have been taking care of, and if she said to you, don't bring people.
She never told me not to bring people.
Did you tell him not to bring people?
No.
Well, how was she supposed to be a mind reader?
Well, I did object to one person's presence. He was supposedly a friend of Brandy's, his older sister, and I did object to it to Cassie.
And what did she say?
She just shrugged her shoulders and made an excuse.
Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So you got tired of all these people in your house?
Yes.
So you asked that the visitation be at someplace else?
Yes.
Were you going to visitation every weekend with your daughter?
At the center, it wasn't on the weekend. It was only during
At your mother's house?
We were going there about 3-4 days a week.
So that was great.
Mm-hmm.
That was great.
Yes.
Should have kept it simple.
We didn't know that there was a problem until she sprung it on us at the last minute saying that there's visitation at the center now instead of at her house.
Okay. Should have
We
been
didn't
smart
know.
enough to figure
If
it
she would have came up to us and said, hey, I have a problem with some of the stuff that's going on, we would have done what we could to correct it.
Mr. Yeldington, you may be right. She probably should have said something to you before she moved it, but that's not a legitimate lawsuit. You should have been smart enough to keep it simple. Go with your wife, sit with your wife, with your 3-month-old daughter, bond with her, spend as much time with her as you can, and not involve the rest of your family. That's just not smart to do. Could she have told you? Absolutely. Is that a lawsuit? Absolutely not. Now, the child was ultimately reunified when?
September the 15th, 2006.
Tell me what happened after September the 15th.
Well, there was one visit that I went to pick her up at. Josh, my grandson, went to pick her up. I had visitation with her every other weekend. And I noticed there was like a mark on the side of her face. Well, when I got her home, it looked like a full-blown handprint on the left side of her face.
Josh, just stand up, please. Josh, you went to pick the baby up.
Yes, ma'am.
Did you see any mark on her face?
Yes, ma'am.
Describe it to me.
It was marks on her face, and there was like some bruising right here.
Did you ask her what happened?
No, ma'am.
Did you?
She wasn't that verbal at that time.
Okay, fine. Do you remember what month this was?
September 2006, towards the end.
So you reported it?
Yes, I did, to the caseworker, and I took pictures.
You have pictures?
Yes, ma'am.
I'd like to see them, please.
There's the originals.
Very hard to see any mark.
Right.
Oh, I see the bruise in the middle of her lip. That I do see.
Yeah. That was on a separate occasion.
And then in October of 2006, I see a large black and blue mark on her forehead.
That's it.
Okay. You did the very wise thing and the right thing to notify the caseworker. You understand that, don't you?
Yes, I'm trying to recall on what these marks were.
Yeah, because we were never notified by the department that there was any marks on her.
Or by my
well,
mother.
But you do understand that being a responsible person, knowing the history of this child.
Yes, ma'am. But what I'm saying is, if there was a allegation made to the department, I think the department would have, at least done an investigation on it. There was no investigation done.
Should have done an investigation on it.
Yes, ma'am.
Whether they did or not is another story. No question about that. Okay, what happened next, Miss Brady?
In January of 2007, I had picked up Kaylee from their home, and when I was giving her a shower, I noticed what appeared to be like burn marks, like in a circle on her butt. And I did call DCF. The DCF investigator did tell me, take her to the hospital, have her examined by the hospital.
And did you do that?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you have a report from the hospital?
No.
Because you're not the parent.
Right, and I didn't have custody of her at that time.
You have a report from the hospital on this incident?
We do not have it. We gave the copy to our caseworker because we were notified of the allegation. And the moment I was notified, I took my daughter down to the hospital, had her examined, and then also told them to call up the sheriff's department and told them I want to do everything by the book because this allegation is ridiculous.
Did you get a report when Miss Brady took her to the hospital?
Not from the hospital, but I do have the report with the department.
I'd like to read it. Are you trying to toilet train your child?
Yes, Your Honor.
Does your daughter have a psychiatric history?
No. After this point, I think she should.
Well, it is clear to me that based upon this, somebody observed marks and thighs that were clearly visible 2 days after your mother-in-law took the child to the hospital.
That right there would be the allegation that Miss Brady put against us for my
No,
daughter.
no, my dear.
Because our caseworker...
Kaylee has excoriated red marks on her buttocks and thigh. That's an observation, sir. That is not Miss Brady's observation. That's an observation either by a physician at the emergency room or the caseworker. It says, describes them. They're on her thighs. They're about 2 inches long. The marks on her lower buttocks looks like they may have been from sitting on the toilet for a long period of time.
Which she was not. And the doctors that we took her to and the investigators and everybody told us that they
Don't tell me what anybody told you. Show me a report. This is the only report that I have.
As far as her sitting on the potty for too long, she liked to play on the potty and try to be a big girl, and she would sit there herself. We didn't force her to stay there. And the marks on her thigh were chafing from her diaper because we went for a walk that morning before my mother picked her up.
You also had an excuse for the bite mark she suffered on her body. You claimed that that was not your fault. It is your fault. Whether you did the biting or you permitted this child to be, for over a week's period of time, bitten by another child, that's your fault. And just because a 2-year-old wants to sit on the toilet for a long time doesn't mean that a parent who is exercising parental responsibility allows a child to do that to such an extent that the child has welts on her bottom. Child should not have marks on their thighs from chafing from a diaper if all you have to do is take care of her, which is what the two of you have to do. Take care of her. So far, Miss Brady, you did everything right.
Thank you.
Now, would you please tell me why you were forced to hire a lawyer?
Well, throughout this 20 months, they've made numerous allegations.
Uncross your arms.
Against me, but then they made a very serious allegation against me July 26, 2006. And I think it was in retaliation because things didn't go very well for them in court.
What do you mean things didn't go?
I guess that day, they were expecting to be reunited with their child that day in court, and it didn't come about. And I also was badgering them about the child support that they owed me. And we had left court, I had gone, and then next thing I know, I'm getting a call from the caseworker to take Kaylee to a hospital or a doctor immediately for a sexual exam, because the allegation had come from Cassie or Cliff.
That said what?
That said they felt that the child had been sexually abused while she was in my care.
Really?
And this really was...
What made you think that?
She would shy away from men. She would not go near them. Like if I would go to pick her up, and I mean, whenever I'd walk around, she would run right up to me. And if I'd go to pick her up, she would curl up in a ball and start crying. So what I did is I told my caseworker, this is what's happening. I don't know what to think about it. I just figured I should notify you about it. And where it went from there was that they put in the abuse allegation for...
Against who?
Against her mother.
You're crazy. Something wrong with you. And you're a nasty person, too.
How am I a nasty person?
You're a nasty person because you retaliated against somebody who took on a responsibility that you and your wife couldn't take care of, which is taking care of a 3-month-old child. I assume that Miss Brady, once she raised her own children, didn't plan on nor desire to raise a 3-month-old baby. The reason she had to do that was in order to prevent your 3-month-old daughter from going into a foster care situation, because the two of you neglected her, minimally neglected her, perhaps abused her. So she was for 20 months. And instead of kissing her feet, which you should have done,
we tried.
You accused this teacher, this person who cleaned up after your mess, of abuse. That's why you're not a very nice person. Because I have a sense that you rule the roost in your house. That's my sense. My sense is also that your wife could use a little psychiatric intervention. And if you don't see to it that that happens, you now have 2 children?
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am.
It's not going to be the last time that your children are the subject of intervention by the state. So if you rule the roost in your house, and if you're not the one who's abusing your children, I suggest that you get your wife some help. How much did you spend on a lawyer?
$600.
That you pay her back. How much support did you ultimately give her for the time she took care of your daughter?
We came up to a verbal agreement that if she claimed Kaylee on the tax return, we would
You
not
didn't
have to
answer my question.
We didn't
I said
give
how
her
much
any money because we had a verbal contract that if she claimed her on her tax return, we wouldn't have to pay child support anymore.
The child support wasn't ordered until 2006.
It doesn't have to be ordered. Does it have to be ordered for you to watch your child so that she doesn't get bitten?
We were giving my daughter diapers, clothes, anything that she needed.
Who cares if you give somebody diapers?
Okay, and then she comes out
Who
and tells the courts...
Who cares if you give a baby diapers?
I understand that, ma'am, but then she comes out and tells the courts that she thinks that me saying I'm not going to pay for her bills, not my daughter's, hers, is unfounded because she actually came out and said she wanted this much for this much for this, and this much for this, and one of those being cable, and my 3-month-old daughter wasn't watching cable.
Mr. Yelvington, so instead of doing something, you did nothing. Exclude the cable. You didn't even protect your 3-month-old daughter.
Yes, we did. As soon as
No, you didn't, because your wife had to, of necessity, fed, bathed, and changed this baby over a week's period of time. And as soon as she saw the first bite mark on this child, that child should have been removed from the environment. She chose not to do that. And if you were in communication with your wife, and if there's not something wrong with her mentally, she would have told you that the 3-month-old child had been abused by somebody in that house. And if you were any sort of a parent, you would have come off the road and said, I don't care where we're going, we'll go to a shelter in order to protect her. Instead, you allowed this child to be abused over a week's period of time, according to your wife. And instead of kissing her feet, you made her life miserable. That's your mother. 25 years from now, you're not going to know who he is, but she will always be your mother. And you will always be able to count on her to clean up after you, not him. And if you need mental help, get it. Do you understand?
Yes, ma'am, but there is one thing. I was not able to notify my husband of the marks because the people that we were staying with would not allow me to use the phone, and I had no...
Crawl out! Abe Lincoln walked 10 miles to school. If your child is being abused, you leave and go to a shelter. What's wrong with you?
Where we lived, there was no shelters nearby.
Go to a police station. Where did you live? In the Yukon? Quiet. You go to a shelter. You go to a police station. You go someplace. Or you don't let your daughter out of your sight.
Yes, Your Honor.
Don't say anything.
Okay.
You both working now?
Yes.
Perfect. Your counterclaim for nonsense is dismissed. You're asking for $1,600, which includes infliction of emotional distress, which you've had, and your attorney's fees.
Yes, ma'am.
Judgment for the plaintiff, that's all. Step out.
Thank you.
Jonathan Pasquinelli says former live-in girlfriend Laura Weathers owes for rent and bills while he was deployed in Iraq.
Bird, would you get the defendant a sweater, please, or have her go outside and get herself a sweater?
Okay.
She looks cold to me. We'll be with you in a moment, sir. Oh, that's much better. Much, much better. Mr. Pasquinelli, according to your complaint, you and Miss Weathers lived together for a period of time. You rented an apartment together, you were splitting the bills. And then you were deployed to the Gulf.
Yes.
And it was your arrangement with the defendant that she was going to stay in the apartment, that you would continue to pay half the rent, and she would pay half the rent, and she would pay all the utilities since she was living in the apartment.
Yes.
You returned from the Gulf and found that she had not paid the rent, that the utilities were never paid, and according to you, she owes you a bundle of money.
Yes.
The defendant says that she only lived in the apartment for 5 months after you left, and you agreed to cover her rent because she was a little short, and in addition, she never received the utility bills. They went directly to your parents' house. That's your defense?
Correct.
All right. When did you move into the apartment together, Miss Withers?
November.
What was your financial agreement?
That we would split the rent and the utilities while he was
How much was
away.
your share of the rent?
$675.
Is that correct, sir?
No, it was actually $575.
And how long did you pay the $575?
Up through January, February.
Through January. When were you deployed to the Gulf, sir?
January 17.
Now, what about the utilities? Did you pay half of the utilities up until he went away?
I did.
Is that correct, sir?
Yes, she did.
Now, how did your agreement change, Miss Weathers, when he left for the Gulf and he was no longer living there?
I actually ended up getting a DUI because my truck broke. I had a tire. It was a brand new truck, and he had said that while I was paying my $3,000 lawyer and all my fines and my truck, that I wouldn't have to pay and that we would do it. I would get it back to you eventually.
And what?
That it was until I was able to. I could just pay what I could.
Was there a full sentence there someplace that I didn't hear?
I don't know how to break it down exactly.
Try speaking in a full sentence, you know, with a beginning and a middle and an end and a start and a finish.
I would just pay what I could when I could.
There you go. That wasn't hard, was it?
It was fine.
So how much did you pay?
$300.
When did you deposit $300?
February.
Show me.
I know he has his bank statement he can prove. I even called his mother to get his bank information.
Well, if you called his mother to get his bank information, that means that what you were doing is you were paying the entire rent out of his bank account. Is that right?
Oh, before he left, he gave them checks in full.
Really?
Yes, Your Honor.
How was she supposed to pay her half?
I left her deposit slips from my bank account to deposit it directly into my checking account.
So it was all taken out of your bank, and
Yes.
she never deposited any money. She says in February she deposited $300. I'm just curious. Do you have any indication of that?
I don't, but I will deposit that money.
So your agreement now, according to you, now that we got a full sentence, Ms. Withers, was that when you could, you would pay him back.
That's correct.
After the $300, when did you start paying him back?
I didn't.
Why?
Because we were talking, and it was just pretty much that whenever I could pay it, I would, and at the time, I couldn't. So eventually, you know, we would just come out in the end. I have an email.
There's a sentence there.
It's coming.
There's a sentence there. I know it's coming.
It's coming. I have an email. There's the sentence from him.
I have an email. That's perfect. 4 words. Sounds just about right.
So, just basically him saying that he knows that I can't pay it, and eventually we will get through it.
Well, that's pretty much what you said. I don't know what was awesome. Something was awesome before we got to the rent.
Oh, we did thousands of emails, so the headlines were a little wacky.
Oh, I see. And he does indicate here, I know you are trying and doing what you can, and I know you'll get me when you can. So, what are you doing now, Miss Withers?
Now I don't understand.
What are you doing now?
In regard to paying him back?
In regard to your life, what are you doing?
I'm an accountant.
An accountant, that's a good thing, so you deal in numbers.
Correct.
And who do you work for?
I was working for Quintera. Right now I'm in between.
How are you supporting yourself again?
Well, unemployment.
Who is this?
This is Anthony.
Anthony. I assume Anthony has a last name?
Palazzo.
And what does Anthony do?
He's also an accountant. He's my boyfriend.
Do you live together?
Correct.
So now you're paying the bills?
Yes.
Not like that at all. This is...
Just a second. Good for you.
That's not the case. Don't make it look like that, because that's not the case.
Looks like the case to me. Looks like he went overseas. I'm sure it wasn't easy over there, and he's expecting you to do the right thing. Instead of doing the right thing, you got yourself drunk. You had an accident with your car. It's not his fault that you had to pay $3,000 in lawyers and fines and everything else that you had to pay because of your own irresponsible behavior while he was away. And so my question is, when do you expect to start paying him back? He expected you to pay him back.
Actually, before he did this, I had set it up where I would be paying him $300 a month. And he was okay with it. And the next thing I know, I'm getting this in the mail. Right after we had had a phone conversation, I had given him $100 just for that week because he had come back.
What did she say when she gave you the $100?
She didn't deliver it to me. Her boyfriend did.
And what did he say?
He didn't really say much.
Stand up. Anthony.
Yes.
What did you say when you delivered the $100?
I was just the carrier. I was just dropping it off, gave him the $100.
Good. So you had a conversation with Miss Withers. Is that right?
Correct.
And what did Miss Withers tell you about the $100?
She said that she owed him $100, drop it off after work. And on my way home from work, I just dropped it off, didn't have any conversation.
Anthony.
Yes.
If my girlfriend with whom I was living, or my boyfriend with whom I was living, said to me, here, take $100 to my ex-boyfriend, I owe it to him, I would ask, what for? Unless you're a drone and just do things as you're told.
No, I knew she owed him money.
Okay. Now,
But
what did
she
you...
couldn't
Stop
afford that.
speaking.
Okay.
You knew she owed him money.
Yes.
Is that because she told you she owed him money?
Yes.
She owed him.
She did not tell me exact amount.
What did she tell him she owed the money for?
She didn't tell me either. I just
And
knew.
you didn't ask?
I didn't ask.
You are some inquisitive guy.
Thanks. Thanks.
You're only interested in the important things, right?
That's correct.
Oh, that's right. I'm not going there. Anthony, What do you do for a living, sir? You're an accountant?
I'm actually a financial advisor.
So you're not a dummy, right?
No, I am not.
If my girlfriend said to me, I owe my ex-boyfriend money, you would say, what do you owe money for, honey? How much do you owe him? Did you have a payment schedule? What are you going to do? Those are the questions that a normal person would ask. Now, you, Anthony, look like a relatively normal person. Yeah. So don't play games with me, sir. Do we understand each other?
We do.
You don't want me to embarrass you, do you?
No.
Any more than I have done already? I'm capable of it, you know.
Okay.
Now, when did you have a discussion with her about how much and what she owed him the money for?
We really never discussed how much she owed. I just knew that she owed him money, and that was it. I didn't really want to know how much. I didn't want to get involved because I didn't want to get in the middle between money because I know how people act around money, so.
You didn't want to be responsible.
Correct.
Now, Anthony.
Yes.
That's smart.
Thank you.
Because if you say, how much do you owe, and she tells you, the temptation might be there to say, let me give it to you because I don't want you to have any connection with him anymore.
Correct.
So you didn't do that.
I didn't want to know. And
why didn't you want to know, Anthony?
Because I didn't want to know how much it was. It could have been a lot, it could have been a little. I didn't want to know.
Well, you said I didn't want to know 3 times, and so I'm asking you, why didn't you want to know? Weren't you curious?
No.
Weren't you a little curious?
I was not. Not at all.
When were you deployed, sir? In January?
January 17.
When did she get home?
July 31st.
So she was there ostensibly for 5 months, is that right?
I don't know when she left.
I don't care when she left. She
Neither.
was there for 5 months.
Fine.
That she owes you money for. And she owes you $2,875. Now, tell me about the utility bills.
When I got home, I had a $617 gas and electric bill.
Can I see it, please? What were you doing there?
I wasn't even there.
You're making wine? What were you doing?
I have no idea. I
Actually,
wasn't.
this is gas and electric also. And these are unopened. Just, I didn't know if...
Can I see the unopened ones,
Yes.
please?
This is actually cable, which I'm not allowed to have cable in San Diego anymore because the bill's
Okay.
unpaid.
You live at 9215?
Yes, I did.
Okay, and these were sent to 9215? Well, she paid you $300, so I'm deducting that from the $28.75, leaving $25.75. And here is a bill. Ooh, past due, date mailed, May 3rd. You would still be there, right?
No, I moved out in the beginning, of May. I wasn't there.
Well, this is mailed on May 3rd, so you owe $574.20. Cable.
I tried disconnecting that because, number one, I'm not home. Number two, we have no computer, which we needed internet for. And because my name wasn't on it, I couldn't disconnect it.
Why didn't you email him?
Name's on the bill.
Shh. Why didn't you email him and tell him?
No, that's the time.
Listen to me. Why didn't you email him and tell him to cancel it?
I did. I had emailed
Show me.
him.
Show me.
I don't have that email.
Anthony.
Yes.
Where were you working in May?
In May, I was working at Quintera.
And where was she working?
Quintera.
Also.
That's how I met him.
So that's how you met in May. When did she move in with you, Anthony?
I would say...
In July.
Jump! Didn't ask you. I asked him.
Beginning of June.
So from May, whatever, when you moved out until you moved in with Anthony here, where were you living?
I was just staying at friends as I was going back and forth because it was closer to my house.
What house?
Or not my house, but to my work. It was just easier because I lived pretty far from work.
Ever been married, Anthony?
No.
Don't do this one.
You getting the drift?
I do.
You do get, I know that you get it, Anthony. I'm looking at your eyes.
She went wine tasting and forgot to pay the bill in February.
I didn't go wine
Listen.
tasting.
You told
Sir, listen to me.
There was a $69 late payment on that bill.
$3,688.
Sounds good to me.
Very good. And say, who is this young lady?
This is my sister.
Very nice young lady, very nice. Thank you. Say, thank you. I got home safely, right?
Yes.
I didn't make any big mistakes over there, and I didn't make any big mistakes over here. Got it?
Got it.
That's all. Thank you.
Parties are excused. 27-year-old parents, Harris and Judy Taub, are suing their neighbors, 13-year-old Kimberly Gilmer and her mother, Martha, for car repair bills.
Mr. and Mrs. Taub, and I assume this is your daughter.
Right.
Who, according to your complaint, is entering law school.
I just finished law school, actually.
You
and
just
took the
finished
bar.
law school.
Yeah.
Good. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Good luck. According to your complaint, you purchased this car for her. You a neighbor of the defendants? Do you live across the street from each other, or was she just visiting a neighbor?
I was visiting.
She was visiting a neighbor of yours, and her daughter got into her car and either backed or moved forward, and her car hit your car, causing some damage. Do you have pictures of the damage?
We do.
I'd like to see it, please. Where did you go to law school, Miss Taub?
Golden Gate University in San Francisco.
Mm-hmm. Oh, this is the tire on the back. I couldn't figure out what it was. It looked like a satellite.
It's a Honda 2001 SUV with a spare tire that's on the back of the tail.
Now I got it. How old are you?
I just turned 13.
When did this happen?
August 14th.
What time of the day or evening did you go out and get into this car?
Like the afternoon.
Whose car did you get into?
My mom's.
Why?
Because we were about to go home.
Who gave you the keys to the car?
My mom's purse was in my grandma's house, and I knew she would forget it, so I had her purse on my shoulder.
So you had your mother's purse on your shoulder. You took the keys?
Yes.
Why did you start the car?
Because it was a really hot day, and I wanted to turn the air conditioning on so it would get cool in the car when we were driving.
But you hit their car. How did that happen?
Because I didn't know the car was in gear, and I didn't know it'd move, and when I put the keys in the ignition and turned it, it jumped forward because the car was in, or lunged forward because the car was in gear.
Tell me your first name.
Kimberly.
Have you ever put the key in the car before? Kimberly? Have you
yeah.
ever? Where were you when you put the key in the car before?
The key in my mom's car or someone else's car?
In your mom. Let's try your mom's car.
At our house, just putting them in.
For what reason?
I don't know. Just because.
Where did you get the keys from when you just because put it in the ignition?
From in her car, because she always puts her purse in the car.
Has your mother ever said to you, don't take the keys out of my car and don't start the car?
Yes.
Yes. So why do you do it?
Because I didn't listen to her.
Right. So now, Kimberly, your mom gave you her pocketbook, or you took it?
I took it.
And did you tell her you were going outside to wait for her?
Well, we all went outside. Me and my older sister, her boyfriend, and my mom.
So your mother saw that you had her pocketbook?
I don't know if she saw I had it, but...
Well, she didn't leave her pocketbook in the house, did she? You were all getting ready to go. Don't speak to her. So, Kimberly, these people are in their house not doing anything. Their car is sitting on the street in a legally parked space, and you get in the car, and you start the car, and you lunge forward, and you damage their car. Who do you think is responsible?
Me.
Great!
But...
Just a second. Great! Now I'll hear your butt.
But I didn't. It's not like I purposely tried to hit their car.
That's why they call it an accident.
Yeah.
Whose fault is it?
Mine.
Right. And if you were an adult, you would have to pay for it, right?
Right.
Because it was an accident that was your fault. Even though it wasn't purposeful, you didn't get into the car with a view towards damaging somebody else's property. That's why we call it an accident. But since you're 12 and not responsible under the law, so I can't make a judgment against you, I have to make a judgment against you. Right? Perfect. And we understand each other. How much did it cost to fix it?
Well, we haven't gotten it fixed yet.
What's your estimate?
$945, close to $950.
$945. Yeah. How many estimates do you have?
We have two. The one I like, though, the brunt of the damage was done on this wheel cover. It's cockeyed. And what the mechanic said to me made sense.
Don't tell me what the mechanic said to you. Just let me see the two estimates.
Sure. Judge Judy, can I tell you how it really happened?
Sure.
Are you interested? Okay.
Sure, I am interested.
Okay.
Always interested if somebody's not telling me the truth.
Okay. Well, I was reading. It was
I don't care what you were doing.
5 o'clock. Quiet. I hear noise outside. Like, I thought they were drunken kids outside before I even saw them, just by the noise element and how they were giggling and laughing.
Let's go. I have other things to do today.
And I see the two kids. They talk to a fella, and I figured, well, you can't stop kids from being on the street. I went back to read a book. About a minute later, I looked out again. I just got a gut feeling nothing good was going to come of this. I see her get into the car, sans pocketbook, no pocketbook. And the other, her girlfriend, was egging her on. And they were
What do you
both
mean? Don't tell me
laughing.
she was egging her on. What did
Do
she
it,
say?
do it. You're not going to do it. Do it. You're not going to do it. I know you're not going to do it. And they were both laughing. I mean, really laughing. And now I'm glued to the window because this car it doesn't even have a paint job. It's like a black matte primer.
I got it.
And then she talked to a fella in a truck. I think maybe she's 16, so
Whatever.
I thought she's going to back out and take off.
Whatever.
But what she did was put it in gear and accelerate. It was such a loud noise.
She didn't do it on purpose. It was an accident. She didn't mean to hurt your car. She didn't mean to hurt her mother's car. She had no business being in a car. She had no business being in possession of the car keys.
Right.
Her mother's statement is she has trouble with her. She can't watch her 24/7, therefore it's not her fault. That's pretty much what you said in your statement. Is that right?
Yes.
Well, unfortunately, as between you and these poor people, you're responsible for the damage your daughter does. And if I were you, I'd have her do a whole bunch of something, babysitting, whatever it is.
I already do babysit.
Well, what do you do with the money that you make from babysitting?
Use it, like go to the mall with my friends.
Why don't you give it to your mother so that you can help pay for this property damage that you caused? Judgment for the plaintiff for the amount of $742.47, which is the amount of the lower estimate. That's all. Step out. Take responsibility for what you do. That's all.
Thank you.
24-year-old Cherie Peterson is suing her former friend, Kevin Outlaw, for a loan to buy a 1999 Lexus. Kevin says Cherie took the car back.
Miss Peterson, you worked with the defendant in the same place?
Yes.
Where was that?
UC Davis Medical Center.
What did you do there?
I do clerical work mostly. We actually still work together, but at the time that everything started, we worked more closely together in the file room, and now I'm doing more of new patient appointment.
Oh, God, that was a long answer. Mr. Outlaw, according to what I read in Miss Peterson's complaint, she was a very good friend to you. You needed a car. You had miserable credit, so you couldn't get a car loan on your own. And you asked her if she would co-sign a car loan for you with the understanding that in 6 months' time you would be working on your credit to get it back up to snuff, and you would refinance the car, getting her name off the loan. That was your agreement. Is that right?
Yes.
In exchange for that, you were going to do what?
Well, I gave her $200 to do
For
that.
her trouble.
Yes.
And she accepted the $200, and you went down to the car dealership where you had already picked out the car?
Yes, ma'am.
When you got there, according to Miss Peterson, they said, well, she can't just be a co-signer on this loan because it would be much better and your payments would be much less if the title to the car was in her name and all the payments in her name because your credit was really bad, right?
Yes, ma'am.
So Miss Peterson said, okay, you know, it's just going to be for 6 months, right?
Right.
So she allowed her name to be put down on the car, title in her name, and then 6 months go by and you don't get the car out of her name and the loan, right?
Yes.
Why not?
Well, at the time, Your Honor, unfortunately, a couple weeks after I got the car, I went out on medical leave. I had a torn knee tendon in my knee, so I was off for a month. And when I came back, at the time I was working 2 jobs. I was a bartender also, part-time. So I lost my job when I came back. They said I was, overworked, I guess. Also, the car had to be put into the shop a few times. I had to get some repairs done on the car.
None of this is Miss Peterson's fault.
That's right.
This is all your bad luck.
Yes.
Keep going.
Okay, so the second income is gone, so I've had to get the repairs done on the car, which really cost me a lot. So I wasn't able to work on my credit like I was supposed to.
And you had creditors because why, sir? Because you didn't pay your bills?
Bad decisions, yes.
Bad decisions isn't the reason for bad credit. You didn't pay your bills.
Okay.
And how many people did you stiff? How many credit card companies did you stiff?
Credit cards are probably 2.
In what amount, sir?
I think one was 600 and something, and I can't really remember the other one.
Anybody else?
Maybe some phone bills, cable bills.
Phone, cable, credit cards. Also, not Miss Peterson's fault. Is that correct?
Correct.
So this is what happened. After the 6 months, Miss Peterson said, I want my name off of this loan. This was our agreement. And she said, if you don't get my name off of this loan, I'm taking the car back. Right?
Correct.
And you didn't get a loan, and she took the car back. Right?
Correct.
And she sold it, correct?
Correct.
And there was a shortfall on the loan.
Correct.
Which you want him to pay.
Correct.
I'll hear you.
Well, I don't understand how I owe, Your Honor. I mean, I held up my end of the bargain as far as the 6 months.
No, you didn't.
I didn't?
No, you didn't. Your contract with her, 6 months' time, you would get this loan out of her name.
We don't have a written contract.
You don't have to have a written contract. You've just testified so that was your contract with her. In exchange for $200 for 6 months, she would allow her name to be used on this loan, and you agreed contractually with her that within 6 months' time, that loan would be out of her name. You failed to fulfill your obligation. Your obligation was to make the payments and get her name off that car loan so that she didn't have to hook her star to your galaxy because you are an accident looking to happen. How much was the shortfall on the car?
I had to come up with about $5,500.
Show me.
Here's the bill of sale and also what I had to come up with. The receipt shows $5,517, I think, and the other is the bill of sale, which the person bought the car for $14,000, and I owed $19,500.
Miss Peterson, how old are you?
I'm 24.
Did you graduate from college?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
You didn't take a course in practical skills.
I didn't take logic, no.
Never do this again.
I won't. I've learned a big
lesson. For the boyfriend, for the husband, for your cousin. Nobody.
I've learned.
Have you?
Yes. About $5,000 worth of learning.
That's a lot of saving.
Yeah.
Judging for the plaintiff in the amount of $5,000. You owe her the money.
Parties are excused. You may step out.
Natalie Holtz claims ex-fiancé Thomas Parrish owes for breaking their lease and for harassing her over the phone. Thomas claims he moved out because of Natalie's constant nagging.
Ms. Holtz, it is your claim that Mr. Parrish, who was a boyfriend of yours for a period of time, owes you some money for rent and also for harassing you. Mr. Parrish says that you're actually the one who's bothering him, that he contributed to the rent while he was living at the apartment with you and your children. But when he moved out of the apartment after a disagreement, he stopped paying rent. He's not on the lease. He feels no obligation to pay rent when he's not living there. Okay. When did you move into the apartment with Mr. Parrish?
After we got engaged. We got engaged December of '05.
Did he give you a ring?
Yes, he did. I have it with me.
Okay.
And I even went with my mom and bought a wedding dress, and I bought my daughter's dresses. We were going to have a ceremony on the beach. And
when did you move in together?
Mid-February of '06. And he went with me to the leasing office. When we went to fill out the forms for the application fee, which was $150, and to transfer within the same complex to a 2-bedroom, that was $500.
So you had a 1-bedroom apartment with your 2 children?
Correct.
Where were you living, sir?
I was renting a house in Chesapeake.
With his mother.
About 35 minutes from where she was living.
Okay, so you weren't living together in the 1-bedroom apartment?
No.
No.
I'm looking at him.
Sorry.
So you moved into the 2-bedroom apartment in February of 2006, and the lease was in your name only.
Correct, but we had discussed, we had an agreement that we would rent the 2-bedroom together for 1 year to save up money to buy a house for after we got married.
Good.
And he paid half the rent for 10 months.
Right, I got you, while he lived there.
Right, correct.
And he paid the rent faithfully, half of the rent, despite the fact that he's only one person out of 4 living in the apartment, correct?
That's correct.
Yeah, but they were minors.
I don't care if they're minors or not. He's one person out of 4.
Correct.
Living in the apartment. You get child support for your 2 children?
I get for 1 child because he has them half of the month and I have them half the month.
So you get child support for 1 child?
Correct.
How much?
$400 a month.
Okay. And he paid half of the other expenses on the apartment for the 10 months that he was living there?
Yes, he did. He paid half the utilities.
Half of everything?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Now, what happened when he moved out?
He didn't give me any notice. He just...
So you must have had a disagreement.
We got into a fight.
About what?
I had asked him to do the dishes, and he was watching TV.
Just, you're going to get a turn.
And I waited about 2 hours. He still hadn't done it. So I went ahead and did it. And I got upset with him. I said, thanks a lot for helping me out around the house. You know, you eat on the dishes too. And he said, well, I was going to do it. I didn't know there was a time limit. And he started yelling at me. My youngest daughter was home. He was yelling in front of her. So I'm like, well, I don't want you yelling around her. He said, well, then I won't. And he went and, where are you going? He's like, I'm moving out. He gave me no notice. I said, what do you mean? Are you going to a hotel room? And he's like, no, I'm moving out. I'm not coming back.
Ms. Holtz, there must have been some clue to you prior to that things weren't going well.
We had had a few disagreements, yes, about...
So things were not going well?
Correct.
Well, you don't want your children to be involved with that sort of hostile environment, do you?
No, but he had only yelled one other time in a year and a half. And
well,
it wasn't
fine. That's fine.
Day occurrence.
That's fine. You don't want it to get any worse, do you? You don't want your children in an environment that's not healthy.
No, that's why.
So that it would be so that it would be a good idea that he left.
Yes.
I would agree with that.
But I felt he was obligated for the last 2 months of the rent.
Where are you living now?
I just moved to a smaller apartment that I could afford on my own.
Just a second. How much rent was this apartment that you moved into together?
$1,203 a month.
And how much was the rent in the apartment that you had been living in?
It was $988. The one bedroom, and my new rent is $895.
So the difference in rent was $200 a month between the one bedroom and the two bedroom.
Right, but if we wouldn't have gotten engaged, I wouldn't have gotten that apartment. I would have gotten something I could afford on my own.
Listen
Your
to
Honor.
Me. I look at objective things. Objectively, you were paying $1,000 on one, and this is $1,200.
And I knew I couldn't afford it if I didn't have a roommate or if we hadn't gotten engaged. I would have gotten a smaller apartment on my own.
Good.
And I also I have bank checks for the transfer fee and the application fee, which he agreed to pay half of. And I also have harassment. I want like $1,000 for phone harassment. I have phone records of him
You
calling.
mean after, just a second, Ms. Holt, do you mean to tell me after he moved out, because he said he wanted it over?
Correct.
He started calling you? You didn't call him?
No.
Just a second. Just listen to me. You just listen to me. You didn't call him?
No, Your Honor.
He called you?
Yes, and I have tape recording of it, calling me terrible names.
You never called me.
Just a second. Mr. Parrish.
Yes, ma'am.
When you left, sir, it is your claim that Miss Holtz called you.
Yes, ma'am.
What did she say when she called you?
She called me a lot of adjectives that I won't use here, and I left. The reason I left was more than just the dishes.
Go ahead, sir.
To back up and give you some background of just that day, I won't be long-winded. It was a Sunday morning. I had some work to do. I was going to do it early in the morning. Instead, I put that work off until the afternoon. While she laid in bed, I did the dishes, fed the kids, cleaned the kitchen, did 2 loads of laundry, put all that away, spruced the house up while she's still in bed, asked her if there's anything else I can do before I went and did my work. No, everything's fine. I went away and worked it took me about 3.5, 4 hours. I came back.
What kind of work did you do?
I'm a small contractor.
Go ahead.
It took about 3.5, 4 hours. I came back. The NFL football playoffs were on. I watched the second half of the first game. The next game was the Dallas game, which I'm a huge fan. She knows that. I sat down to watch that. In the meantime, she had gone in the kitchen and started going off about everything. I had left a Walmart receipt on the counter from where I bought some groceries the day before, which I bought my share and then some of the groceries for all 4 of us. She started griping about the receipt on the table. You know, why'd you leave this receipt here? You want money from me? I said, did I ever ask you for money? Is this why you left the receipt? She on and on and on. This goes on for over an hour.
It's not true, Your Honor.
Shh, don't interrupt him.
After the conclusion of that, she goes and stands in front of the television, or not directly in front of it, but right beside it, hand on her hip, and says, you've watched one football game, now I expect you're going to sit here and watch another one? And I looked at her and I said, yeah, I'm going to watch another one. You know, I'm a Dallas fan. I'm going to watch the game. And she said something, and that was it. That was the straw that broke the camel's back. I got up. I had some shirts and some clothes in the apartment. She goes, what are you doing? I said, I'm leaving. I've had enough.
Your Honor, he never works on Sundays. He hates working on Sundays. He did not go to work
Your
that
Honor,
day.
What difference does it make whether he
Because
went to
he's
work or
lying.
not?
It's showing that he lies.
I
He's
did go to
lying.
work.
Ms. Holtz, if something doesn't make sense, it's usually not true. And what doesn't make sense to me is I listened to him only for a couple of minutes, and I've made a judgment, because I'm usually good at making judgments, that he's not a nut.
Thank you.
I don't.
You haven't heard this.
Oh, I don't think he's a nut. I think maybe he was stretched to the limit, but I don't think he's a nut. And I think when he left, he probably would have left you alone. But you started bugging him because you were angry, just as you are angry right now. You are so angry right now, you can't even contain yourself.
I'm just nervous, Your Honor.
You're angry. You're still angry.
I'm angry at what he called me, yes. He called me very vulgar and obscene things, and I don't deserve that.
I'm going to ask you again to answer my question and answer it honestly. After he left that day, who called who first?
He called me.
First.
Yes, he called me 27 times.
Just a second. So what did he say, Miss Holtz, when he called you after he left?
He said that I only think about myself, that I'm a self-centered, and I can't repeat what he called me. And yes, I did call him once. I asked him for my key back.
Just a second. My question was, who called who first?
He called me first. I have the phone records.
You have a phone record that shows all your outgoing calls?
Yes, I do, but his is first.
Great. Let me take a look at what you have. Put a mark next to where you called him.
I'll put a star where I called him. All the other check marks are him calling me.
Just go back to the beginning.
The beginning is where he left on the 6th.
What's your phone number, sir?
286.
It's your mother's house.
That's my cell phone. That's the only.
At your cell phone.
That's the only phone I use. Yes, ma'am.
Well, on the 6th, madam, 286 is outgoing.
It says incoming.
Outgoing, outgoing, outgoing. Then you have a couple of incoming. But on the 6th, I want you to point to where I've checked this off, please, and let her look at it.
All the highlighted ones. Okay.
I'm not talking highlighted. Look at where I made the check marks.
That was in the afternoon. He was still home. Or he was still, he hadn't moved out yet. That was in the afternoon.
Why would she call me?
The next day.
It's
the next day when he started harassing me.
Listen to me. Okay, give it back to me.
Incoming. These are all incoming.
Miss Holtz, you don't want me to think you're a nut, do you?
No, ma'am.
On the 6th, according to you.
That night.
I'm speaking. You called him at a time when you said he wasn't out working, because you said he doesn't work on Sundays. So clearly, you called him at that cell phone number, 216, 252, and 252.
Yes, he went to the grocery store.
So what'd you call him 3 times for?
He called me, and I called him back on several occasions.
So we went to the grocery store for whom?
For all of us. We all had to eat.
So he was out on family business?
Yes, before we got in a fight. Yes, ma'am, he was.
After I finished working.
Just a second. Okay. Then the next phone call on the 7th of January was a phone call from you to him at 8:09 p.m. and he called you back at 8:29. You called him first. Then you called him at 9:10 p.m., 6:59 a.m., 7:30 a.m.
He wouldn't return my call to get my key back, Your Honor.
Please.
And I have the text messages right here of all the incoming text messages.
Okay, Miss Holtz, I'm going to listen to me, madam. You got to get over it. Get over it.
It's okay to call somebody the B word and the C word?
Get over it. Sticks and stones break your bones. Names will never hurt you. Did your mother ever teach you that? You have to get over it. It's finished. You may be angry. You may be angry that you devoted 10 months of your time to him. He may not have said nice things to you. I mean, you can tell.
I've had 24 calls since the 9th on here.
Listen to me. Listen to me. I'm looking at your phone records.
I don't have them.
You called him first.
To get my key back and my mailbox key back.
Change the lock. What? Go ahead.
I just want to clear up a couple of things. You've done a nice job of clearing up the harassment. First of all, I don't understand her suing me for how much she sued me for, $1,200, $1,300, whatever it is. I could understand if she was going to sue me for bigamy. I could understand that, because in that pretty little head there's about 12 personalities.
Mr. Parrish.
This is what I get on messages.
Mr. Parrish, listen to me. Not necessary, sir.
Okay, I just letting you know.
Let him show his true colors.
Not necessary.
Okay.
She may be stressed. She's a single mother.
She's a good mother.
She's a single mother. Takes care of the kids. Money, I'm sure, is tight. I'm sure it was much more comfortable when you were there.
I understand.
Much less stressful financially when you were there. You're not there anymore. A life she anticipated is over. But I don't think that you're responsible for any rent when you weren't living there. I think that you took care of more than your fair share of the bills when you lived there in a family that was really not yours. You left. The responsibility is hers. She was angry. And these phone records do not support harassment on your part, sir. I mean, common sense dictates that if you left, you would have been just as happy to be left alone. Period. But very hard when you are stressed to deal with that kind of change. I get it. But you're not entitled to any money, madam. Your case is dismissed. That's
Your
all.
Honor.
That's all.
Jennifer Berry, is suing her former friend and roommate, 24-year-old Christina Washington, for unpaid rent and punitive damages. Christina claims Jennifer forced her out of the apartment.
Miss Barry, you and Miss Washington decided to rent an apartment together. You rented the apartment, didn't work out. It is your claim that Miss Washington moved out of the apartment without notice to you. You want her to pay her portion of February and March's rent, plus punitive damages, which you don't get, plus fees that you were charged because of possible eviction. And Miss Washington says that you forced her out because you told her that you were raising her portion of the rent and that things became intolerable, which is why she moved. Okay. When did you sign the lease on this apartment?
June of 2007.
What was the monthly rent?
It was $725, Your Honor.
$725?
Yes.
Who was going to be living in the apartment?
Myself, Miss Washington, and my son.
How old is your son?
He's 9.5.
How many bedrooms were there?
3.
You had one?
Yes.
She had one?
Yes.
And your son had one?
Yes.
How were you dividing the rent?
It was supposed to be 50-50. That's false.
Well, that shouldn't have been 50-50. You should have been paying 2/3 because you were using 2 of the bedrooms.
It was under my impression when we moved down here, Your Honor, that she said she was fine paying half, but she had to.
False. Well, evidently she doesn't feel that way. Now, her answer says that you agreed that you would pay 2/3 of the rent because you had a master bedroom and you had one of the guest bedrooms.
Yes.
And your son had one of the guest bedrooms.
Yes.
So it is only logical that she would pay 1/3 of the rent, or $241. How much rent did you pay in July?
$245, and then it went down 20 because...
$245. August, September, how much did you pay during those months?
The same, until probably about September.
Then,
That's
according to
incorrect,
Ms.
Your Honor.
Washington, there came a time when the plaintiff said that she was raising your rent.
That was in December.
Tell me about that.
It was right before Christmas, and I came home from my second job, and there was a Post-it note on my bed saying that starting February 1st of 2008, it was going to be split 50-50.
Did you put that Post-it on?
Yes, I did. Every time I tried to talk to her, she didn't really...
Just a second. July, August, September, October, November, 5 months she had given you 1/3 of the rent.
No, that is not correct. She paid more than that.
How much
She paid $350 in August, and every month after that, she paid $325.
$325. It's not half of $725.
Correct. When we moved down here, she stated that once I get settled in, I'm fine paying half. That's okay. Because the only reason we got a 3-bedroom
well, then there was
because she agreed
okay,
to that.
Very fine. So what I'm telling you is I have to view this as a contract between the two of you. And since there was clearly no meeting of the mind between the two of you as to how much each of you were going to pay, there was no contract. So she moved out in January or February? January. When did you give her notice that you were moving out?
I tried to talk to her right after the new
Trying
year.
to talk to her, you don't have to try to talk to her. You can write her a
The
letter.
second
Did you
then-
write her a letter?
No.
Okay.
I tried
Did
to
you
talk
just
to her over the phone, and she hung up on me.
Did you just move out?
No, I told her I was leaving because I didn't agree to the...
What date in January did you tell her you were leaving?
Probably the 2nd.
January 2nd?
And I moved out the 5th. That's incorrect, Your Honor.
She owes you her 1/3 of February's rent.
She didn't pay January's rent either.
You didn't pay January's
No, I
rent?
didn't, because I wasn't going to pay the half.
Oh, well, you have to pay your 1/3. You have to pay your 1/3 of January, and you have to pay a 1/3 of February, because that's also reasonable and fair to give 30 days notice so she can find somebody else if she wants to find somebody else to rent the room to. Okay. That's what you have to do.
Your Honor, I wanted to argue about the 1/3 of the rent.
You can argue all you like.
Okay.
If you thought she's supposed to pay a half, and she never paid half.
She paid $350.
She never paid half. Even $350 is not half. And she says she believes she should be paying a 1/3. I believe she should be paying a 1/3. Let's say if you had your son and you had 2 small bedrooms and you said, look, I'll take a small bedroom, my son will take a small bedroom, and you can have the master bedroom. Even that's reasonable. But you have the master bedroom and you have another bedroom and you want her to pay 2/3. It's unreasonable. Now, the next thing I want to know is, what fees did you have to pay and why to the landlord?
On January of the 28th, I have the eviction notice. I had to pay $1,075 in order to stay.
And what was that for?
It was $725 rent, $200 in legal fees because they filed the eviction notice, and I have a copy of that right here.
Well, show me where it was $200 for legal fees.
Okay. It's in the lease.
No, I just want to see that $200 of that $1,075 went for legal fees.
Okay. It's right here, Your Honor. And then here's the receipts that I paid it.
Okay.
The original amount I was supposed to pay was $1,075, and I couldn't afford the whole $1,075. I had to scrape pennies out of my son's piggy bank to get the $1,070.
It was $200 for the filing of the eviction notice, which she owes you half of because she didn't give you sufficient notice in order to find somebody else, if you wanted to find somebody else to live with.
It's hard to find someone else when I'm a single mom. I've got my kids at home.
What
Nobody
do
wants
I
to
want?
move in with
She
a
had her
single mom.
boyfriend there all the time.
Just a sec.
Helping her with
Just
stuff.
shh. Don't speak out. I don't like when you speak out. That's not my problem. That's not her problem. You didn't have a contract with her. You had a
According
contract.
to the rental agency, a half and half is what's on the lease.
You and she did not have an agreement as to how much she should be paying in rent and how much you should be paying. And based upon common sense, it doesn't make sense for her to pay half when you have two people living in your house who have two of the bedrooms in a three-bedroom house.
I
Doesn't
didn't
make
have-
sense. She
No.
owes you $583. She owes her share of the month of January when she was there for at least part of the month, that's for sure. And I believe she should have given you 30 days notice, giving you an opportunity to find someone else. Judgment for the plaintiff in the amount of $583. Thank you, that's all.
19-year-old Chris Alford is suing his ex-girlfriend, 19-year-old Ashley Griffin, for a loan to pay her rent. Ashley says Chris gave her the money.
Mr. Alford, the defendant used to be your girlfriend. According to your complaint, you are no longer involved in a relationship, but at some point prior to your breaking up, you loaned her $300. You want that money back.
Yes. This was after we broke up. Like, we broke up, then she called me.
So you lent her the money after you were no longer together.
Yes.
When did you lend her the money, sir?
I sent it the 1st of July.
Tell me about that.
All right, we broke up, whatever, when she came up.
She came up where? You
To
have
Philly. We was no longer seeing each other.
You live in Philadelphia.
Yes.
You live where?
Florida.
And when did she come to Philadelphia?
Like the beginning of June.
Who did she stay with?
Her mom, I guess.
Your mom lives in Philadelphia?
Outside of Philadelphia.
Stop moving up and down. When she came up to Philadelphia to visit her mother, and you, I assume.
I saw her a couple hours.
That's not
Were you
true, Your
still
Honor.
dating?
Then, yeah.
What caused you to stop seeing each other in a romantic way?
Chris Alford says ex-girlfriend Ashley Griffin owes for a loan to pay her rent. Chris also says Ashley is a two-timer.
Okay, go ahead.
All right, she missed her flight, right? In the morning time, she missed her flight.
She missed her flight going back to Florida?
Yes.
When was that?
I don't know the exact date.
It was sometime in July.
He said you went up in June.
No, it was like the middle of July sometime.
Did you miss your flight going home?
Yes, ma'am.
When you were in Philadelphia?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. What happened when she missed her flight, sir?
She missed her flight, and she called some guy and was like, I missed my flight. It cost $50 or something to pay the balance or something. And I was like, who's that on the phone? And I turned around, whatever, because I was half asleep when all this happened. She hit me, whatever, like, I missed my flight. Da-da-da-da.
So what you're saying is she was sleeping over at your house?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Well, then you were with her more than just a couple of hours during this visit to Philadelphia.
Okay.
All right, so you decided you didn't want to see her anymore because she was talking to somebody else and borrowed $50 from somebody else. Is that what you're trying to tell me, Mr. Alford? Could we get to it, please?
All right.
Is that what happened?
Other stuff too, but that's what started it all.
And then this other young man sent you money or called up and said add the ticket on his credit card and you went home.
Yes, ma'am.
Tell me why you needed this $300, Miss Griffin.
Can I start from the beginning?
No.
Well, because I was going back home in July. So I had already bought my ticket and I was short for my rent. So I asked him for the money. I didn't say, can I borrow it? I asked him, can I have it? And he said, yeah. And he gave me the money.
So you needed the $300 for rent because you had spent the money.
But I was off. And we spent more than just that night together. He picked me up from the airport and I was with him that day. And we went to go pick up his witness.
Tell me about when you called him and asked him for the money.
Well, I called him and I pretty much said I needed the money for the rent because I was short.
Where were you when he gave you the money?
I was at my house.
In Florida?
Yes, ma'am. He Western Unioned me the money.
You have the receipt for Western Union?
Yes, I do.
Can I see it, please? Mr. Alford, I'd like you to tell me about the conversation that you had with her about the $300, please.
All right, I'm in the car, me and 3 friends of mine, and my phone rings. And I put it on speaker because I couldn't drive and talk. So I'm talking to her, and she's like, oh, my God, I don't have enough money to pay for my rent, this, and that. And I'm like, at first I'm like, oh, like, what am I supposed to do about that? Then she said, would it be possible if you could send me $300 and I will pay you back next Friday on my paycheck? Everybody in the car heard her say that.
Don't tell me what they heard. Did you hear it?
I heard it. Clearly, it's right here. The phone's right here. I was listening, talking like, all right, well, I can't spare it. I mean, so you got to send it back next Friday. And you can see on Western Union, date was July 1st. If she just now said she was in Philly.
You're absolutely right, sir. It was July 1st.
I said he sent me the money July 1st. I said I went home after July 1st.
Are you telling me you went home and then continued your relationship with him after he sent you the money?
Yes, we were still together, so I don't know why he's saying we weren't. We were together at that time. Why would I stay at his house? Why would he pick me up from the airport if we weren't together?
He says it was in June.
It was in June. That's why you was at my house. It was in June, man.
Well, you must have your airline ticket.
I don't have it.
Who was this other person that you called for $50?
All right, when he came down, he knew about the guy already.
Don't tell me what he knew. I didn't ask you for a whole story. I said, who was this other person?
It was some other guy that I was messing with.
So now what you want me to believe is he sent you $300 to help you cover your rent. Then you went up to Philadelphia to see him. But at the time that he sent you the $300 for the rent, you were messing around with somebody else that he didn't know about. Is that right?
No, he knew about him. We were only like
friends.
No, we weren't friends. We were more than friends. But at that time, I knew I could depend on him.
You have to learn that you have to stand on your own 2 feet. You have to stop relying on people, and you have to stop using people. Do you understand?
Yes, ma'am.
Good. Judgment for the plaintiff in the amount of $300. That's all. Thank you.
Parties are excused. You may step out.
Holly McLean says ex-husband Steve Reed owes for his share of their daughter's wedding. Steve says Holly went over budget.
Mr. Reed, how many children do you have, sir?
6.
Who is your oldest child?
Stephanie.
That's this child here?
Yes.
And your youngest?
Brandon.
How old is Brandon?
Brandon is 8.
You and Mrs. McLean were married for how long?
2 years, I believe.
And how many children do you have together?
2.
Your daughter is planning her wedding. And according to her, you and your former husband agreed to split the cost of the wedding. You did a budget. It was going to be $5,000. Mr. Reed, you agreed to pay for half.
Correct.
You did, in fact, pay $2,500.
Yes, ma'am.
But the wedding went over budget, and you want him to pay half of the overage of $800.
Yes.
And Mr. Reed says, you went over budget, girls. That's your problem. I agreed to pay for half the wedding, which was budgeted at $5,000, and that's what I'm going to pay.
I agree.
Why did you go over budget?
Well, the reason we had gone...
So, listen, did you have a nice wedding?
Yeah. She had a beautiful wedding.
Beautiful wedding, beautiful bride, beautiful husband, nice-looking parents. Don't act... What?
I said yes, thank you.
Do you let him speak at home? Is that the reason he feels compelled to speak here? Because he's not allowed to speak at home?
Don't speak, honey.
She's cute. Okay, now getting back to you. Why did you go over budget?
Well, the reason we had gone over budget was we had it at the reception at a place that cost a lot more money than we had anticipated.
Now, when you realized that this was going to cost more than you anticipated, because you could have found a site that would have cost within the budget, but that's not what you really wanted, right? You wanted a different place. What did you do when you realized you were going over budget?
Well, Stephanie and I did a lot of emails back and forth because she actually lives in Utah. And I was planning the wedding here. And so I had told her that it looked like we were probably going to go over the cost of the wedding. And so she was kind of my in-between person between her dad and I, and had emailed to him and his current wife that we were going to be probably going over the budget.
Do you have an email from him indicating that's fine, I will pay half of whatever the overage is?
I do.
Let me see it.
This was actually an email to Stephanie.
That's fine. Well, this is not from Mr. Reed. This is from Mr. Reed's wife.
Right.
Do you know that your wife sent an email, sir, that said, listen, that's to Steph, and said, your dad and I don't have a problem if you go over the $5,000 sum, as long as your mom is willing to split the cost. Do you know that your wife said that?
At the time that email was written, no, I wasn't aware that she said that.
When did you become aware of this?
I became aware about 1 to 2 weeks before the wedding as we discussed the overage.
So your wife was speaking allegedly for you, which she can't do, but they acted upon this and then went over their budget. Do you understand?
Yes.
So it was really in good faith that your daughter went over the budget because she felt as if she was dealing with your wife, and your wife had the authority to say, okay, as long as Mom splits the cost and as long as it not go. So when you found out, Mr. Reed, about this email, what did you do?
Well, by the time I had found out about the comment that my wife made, things had already become contentious because all along I had made it clear to Holly that I agreed to a certain amount. Not only that, in the beginning, Holly wanted to spend far less. I actually felt that we should spend more, and it was my suggestion to pay the $5,000. Then come
Is
back.
that true?
That's true.
That's a good guy.
So to then come back to me and then say that she wanted me to pay more money, and not only that, in the beginning when she wanted me to pay the overage, she wanted me to pay the entire overage, which she estimated would be $300 to $400. And like I say, it became contentious, and so I said, we're going to have to settle the matter after the wedding. I don't want it to affect the wedding.
You're absolutely right, Mr. Reed. So? Well, he did not agree to pay half of the overage.
I know he did not agree to pay half. But when I had sent them an email stating why we had gone over, and he even told me on the wedding day that he would help me pay the overage of the wedding.
Did you tell her that, Mr. Reed?
What I said is that I would look at the expenses and analyze them and get back to her.
And did you look at the expenses?
I did.
Anything there look untoward to you?
The invitations cost $280 more than we had originally was discussed with my wife, Suzanne. There was a DJ that I knew nothing about, and he cost $450.
Well, DJ is great at a wedding. Did everybody have a good time?
I think so.
Did you dance?
A little bit.
I didn't say if you danced well, Mr. Reed.
Yes.
I said, did you dance?
I did.
Other than the DJ for $450, was it originally anticipated that there was any music?
There was going to be pre-recorded music. Okay.
I have very little sympathy because if what we're talking about here is $800, I would have paid the $2 so we wouldn't end up here. So there wouldn't be any bad feeling. You probably already paid so much to raise your daughter to this point, right? Probably cost you a couple of bucks over the course of, how old are you?
19.
19 years? So I don't know whether I would make a big to-do. But let's hear. All right, the DJ, what else?
Let's see. There was a video that was done that was presented at the wedding. It was a nice video. It was $210.
A video of what?
They interviewed Stephanie and Tim about the way they met and things like that. And it was shown at the wedding. Yes, it was nicely done. But once again, I knew nothing about it. The bridesmaids' outfits, traditionally the bridesmaids pay for those.
That's absolutely right. Why didn't the bridesmaids pay for their own outfits?
Well, Stephanie and I discussed that we would just take care of that.
Well, I don't know. You can't do that and obligate him. Ms. McLean, first of all, it's not traditional.
Right.
And second of all, you can't be magnanimous with his money. What else?
The last one is traditionally a portion of the flowers are paid for by the groom or the groom's family. So the portion of those flowers, I have it listed at $248.
Can I say something about the flowers? I didn't feel we should ask Tim's family to pay for the flowers. They were actually having a reception in Arizona a week later, and they were paying for everything there for that reception. And they also paid for the luncheon, so I didn't feel it was right to ask them to also pay for the flowers.
Well, very nice. What do you want from him? He doesn't want to be used as a cash register.
Oh, I understand.
Which is, we'll make the arrangements, and you'll pay your half. And we don't have to consult with you. We're going to tell you this is what we want to do, and if it goes over, it goes over. Well, that's unreasonable.
Well, there's more to it than that.
You may explain it to me. But did you call him and tell him about the DJ before you hired the DJ?
No.
Did you call him and tell him that you were going to pay for the bridesmaids' dresses before you agreed to pay for them?
No.
Did you call him and tell him you decided not to ask the bridegroom's family for the flowers?
Yes, we did tell them that.
When?
Before the wedding, when he had stated that they thought that the groom's family had to pay for part of the flowers.
And what did you say? You told him no.
I didn't agree with that.
Fine. That doesn't mean he's not entitled to say, that's fine. You want to pay for that? Pay for it.
Okay, but there's more to it. Where we had the reception, we actually wanted to have it at my parents' house so we could cut the costs. Well, Steve didn't want to have it there.
I don't blame him.
It would have been, the cost would have been a lot less.
Miss McLean, what you just said to me has absolutely nothing to do with what I've told you, which is You cannot use your former husband as a cash register. He's a person with opinions, and as long as you want to spend money and you want him to reimburse you for the money, he has the right to an opinion. You may not agree with that opinion, and if you don't agree with it and you want to spend the money, you spend it. What he's complaining about is you didn't discuss it with him, and that was wrong. I just want you to understand that I don't think your father was wrong. I think your mother was well-intentioned, but I don't think your father was wrong. And I've been involved with lots of weddings, and I wouldn't think of saying to my ex-husband, you're going to pay for half, and I'm going to decide where it's going to be, what kind of music we have, what flowers we have, what the invitations look like, and I'll send you the bill for half. Right?
But we did...
Flattened out on the floor. And I wouldn't blame him. So, in case there's any bad feeling, I don't think your father was wrong. And Miss McLean, if you wanted to do these things and you chose not to get an agreement with him before, you pay for it yourself. Case is dismissed. That's all.
Parties are excused. You may step out.
24-year-old Angelica Ruiz is suing her ex-boyfriend, Brett Peterson, for a propane bill, unpaid credit card charges, and for the cost of a gun.
Miss Ruiz, you and Mr. Peterson lived together for how long?
4 years.
And you lived together in a home that you purchased.
Yep.
In your name.
Yes.
Mortgage was in your name.
Yes.
I gather from reading the complaint and the answer that Mr. Peterson and you had an arrangement whereby you shared expenses on the house. So those shared expenses include the mortgage payment. And how much was the mortgage payment?
A little over $700 a month.
So while Mr. Peterson was there, he was helping you pay down the mortgage?
Yeah.
Okay, and he has no equity in the house?
No.
It is your claim that you separated, and he owes you for two things. He owes you for a gun that you purchased for him, that he said he would pay for, and that he owes for some expenses on the house, some propane or something.
The propane credit cards.
And Mr. Peterson said the gun was a gift from you to him, and the expenses on the house he paid for up until the time he left. He owes you nothing.
Okay.
When did you move out of the house, Mr. Peterson?
December 30th, 2007.
When was the gun purchased?
September 31st, 2007.
Were you working at the time?
Yes, ma'am.
You were putting money into a joint account to pay expenses?
Yes, ma'am.
Was this gun purchased on a credit card?
Yes, it was.
And were your credit cards paid for out of a joint account?
Yes.
How much was the gun?
It was $1,711, I believe.
Now, let me understand this. You purchased a gun, and it was placed on a credit card that was in your name.
In my name, yep.
Did you have any responsibility on that card at all?
Oh, ma'am.
Were all of the purchases for the household made on that credit card?
The purchase of the house?
Yes. When you went out for dinner?
Oh, yeah, when we went out for dinner. Stuff like that, yeah.
Was used on that credit card?
Yep.
And each of you put in money each month into a joint account. Is that right?
Yes, ma'am.
How much did you put in, Mr. Peterson?
Whatever my check was, it went directly into the account.
Well, give me some idea.
About $300 a week. I have my check statements right here.
Can I see it, please? So it is correct that his checks went directly into the joint account?
That's right.
To pay all the bills?
To help pay, yeah.
And how did you get cash to live on, sir?
I have an ATM card.
So you would draw out money for your personal cash, just walking around money. And how much were you putting in the bank?
It was between $400 to $500 a week, plus I got child support, which was about $200 a month.
How many children do you have?
I have one child.
And that child was living with you?
Yes.
Okay. You moved out on December the 30th.
Yes, ma'am.
When was the last time you put a check into the account?
Whenever I got paid the week before.
Is that correct? Fine. Then why do you think he owes you any money?
Because credit cards. And it's all from when we were together. And so I expect him to pay half of it. I will pay my share as long as he pays half of his. I mean, we both used the credit cards. We both ate the dinners. We both lived in the house. I don't see why he shouldn't have to pay for it.
Depends upon what the expenses were for.
For us, going out to eat, his Christmas with his family, presents for my family, anything that we needed.
Let's talk about the credit card, Mr. Peterson. Would it be a fair statement that it was your intention when this money was charged on the credit card that this was to be paid out of joint funds?
All our bills were paid out of joint funds.
Was that your intention?
Yes.
So it would be a fair statement, sir, that Ms. Ruiz would be right in saying that any charges that were made prior to December 30th when you left should be shared between the two of you equally.
It depends on what the bills were for.
Well, you didn't
I have
go
no
through,
proof of what
just a
the
second.
amount.
You didn't go through the bills when you were living together, did you? And say this was yours and this was mine? You just paid the bills together, jointly.
Yes.
Then it would be a fair statement that had you not left on December 30th, you would have continued to contribute your check and pay down the bills.
Yes.
Perfect. What was the balance as of December the 30th?
On just the credit cards are we going through?
Just the credit card.
Because I got 3 of them. I got 2 U.S. bank cards and 1 Home Depot card.
Forget Home Depot. That's your house.
He bought it.
Forget Home Depot. You think you bought at Home Depot, went into your home?
I can't even stay there now.
Well, I don't care whether you can stay there or not. That's what it was purchased for your house. I assume that you're going to sell it. I don't know whether you're going to make a profit or not.
I can't even sell it.
Real cases, real people. Judge Judy. Angelica Ruiz says former live-in boyfriend, Brett Peterson, owes for a propane bill, unpaid credit card charges, and the cost of a gun.
Now, other than the Home Depot card, let me have the balances on the other 2 credit cards.
The one is $7,898.94.
Let me see it, please.
I'll just give them both to you. And they're down at the bottom.
The other one is $1,500. It's $9,300. His half of those credit cards is $4,650.
Okay.
What else?
His gun.
He's not paying you for his gun, madam.
Why?
I would assume that one of these credit cards is also for the gun. Is that right?
No. Oh, yeah, you're right.
Right.
I added up without the gun.
I added up with the gun. The 2 credit
Okay.
cards. Half.
Okay.
Because you put it on a credit card where joint monies were used.
But he worked an extra job just to pay off that gun. He needed it for his hunting season, which was before he got the money.
Miss Ruiz, I'm sympathetic with you, madam. You don't have what all these expenses were for. You don't have whether these were expenses for your child, for whom you get child support, who's not his responsibility. You have none of that.
Okay.
Do you understand?
I understand.
It's always messy when there's a separation.
Yep.
It's much more cumbersome when there is no marriage, because when there's a marriage, the law usually provides this is your property, this is your property. But I am less sympathetic, Ms. Ruiz, because at least for part of the time that he lived there, for 4 years, he was paying down a mortgage for a house for which he has no equity. Judgment for the plaintiff in the amount of $4,650. Thank you. That's all.
Thank you.
Jennifer Richardson says her estranged mother-in-law, Sandra Richardson, refuses to hand over title on a car she bought from her. Sandra is countersuing, claiming Jennifer stole appliances from her home.
Miss Richardson, this is your soon-to-be ex-mother-in-law, and I assume that sitting in a witness chair is your soon-to-be ex-husband.
Yes.
Okay. According to you, you purchased a home for your son and his wife, and the idea was that you and your husband were going to live with them. Unfortunately, your husband became ill and passed away.
The house was originally bought for us.
Yes, the house was originally
with
bought
our money.
No, I'm well, sorry, Your Honor.
No, it was your money.
Well, can I just say something? If she wants to lie about
just a second.
10,000.
Just a second. Who paid the mortgage on the house?
I did. It was in my name.
I didn't ask you if it was in your name. I said who paid the mortgage.
For the first 8 months, my husband and I did. When they moved in, they shared the responsibility.
That's what I gathered. The first several months, you and your husband were making the mortgage payments on the house, and then you and your husband moved in, and then you split the mortgage payments, right?
Yes.
But the house was purchased for them, and they were there alone for a period of time. Anyway, the house is really not the issue unless we get to the counter. Don't interrupt me. House isn't really the issue until we get to the counterclaim. We're going to talk about the house in a moment. This has to do with the car that you purchased in your name, but that your daughter-in-law used. But your daughter-in-law used it to take you around from place to place, all your appointments. She sort of chauffeured you around. Anyway, there came a time when you left the house. And shortly after you leaving the house, your daughter-in-law and son split up.
Right.
Your daughter-in-law went home to her family. Where do you live now?
That's not what happened.
Where do you live now?
I live with my mother.
In what state?
In Florida.
And where do you live?
Michigan.
Okay. Did you take the car with you?
At what
Where
time?
is the car now?
My husband has it.
Okay. It is your claim that you wanted the car, and your mother-in-law said you have to pay for it. You were annoyed that She said that you had to pay for it because you always thought it was your car, but you sent her $3,000. She doesn't deny that you sent her the $3,000, but she never sent you the title to the car and never sent you the car. So you want something. You want either the car or you want your $3,000. Mother-in-law says the $3,000 was for other bills that were outstanding. And in addition, she's counterclaiming because she says when you moved out of the house, you took her property, some appliances and things that belonged to her. So I'm going to cut right to the chase. Mrs. Richardson, since you acknowledge that your daughter-in-law sent you $3,000, what did she send you the money for?
I asked for $5,000 for the car. She sent me $3,000. They owed me like $6,000 just back rent, so I don't figure the car is paid for.
Wrong. If you asked $5,000 for the car and she sent you $3,000, you can't offset that. Get the money that they owe you from rent from your son. Get it from him, not from her.
May I speak?
When it's your turn.
Okay.
She stole $20,000 worth of appliances and stuff.
Listen to
from
me.
my home.
When you purchased this house, for the first 8 months, where she and your son lived there, were the appliances in the house?
There was old appliances. I purchased all brand new appliances.
And when you went home, after your husband died, when you left, in what month was that?
Around May, about the middle of May.
Of 06? And when did the two of you split up?
August.
And between May of 06 and August of 06, where were the appliances?
They were in the home when I left.
And where did you go? From Florida back to Michigan?
Michigan.
And what did you take with you when you went?
I took a clock, my big TV, left leather furniture, all the appliances, everything in the home when I left because it cost me so much to move all the stuff. So I left it for the kids.
Absolutely right. So it was a gift. So let me explain something to you, Miss Richardson. Don't get involved between your son and your daughter-in-law. The courts will determine if she took marital property, because once you made a gift to them, you didn't make a gift to your son. Listen to me.
Okay.
You made a gift to them. You left it when you moved back to Michigan in May. You left it as a gift for the kids. And if they had stayed together as husband and wife, they would have had all the appliances. The problem is they split up. And then you said, well, I don't want her. She's a stranger to me now. She can't take this property. I bought it. It was a gift. Once you give a gift, you can't have sticky fingers. You can't say, well, it's a gift, but I'm going to hold on to it.
But I bought it as myself because I lived there.
I don't care. When you left it there. And you didn't abandon it along with the leather sofa. You took what you wanted. You took a grandfather clock. You took other things that were important to you. And you left the other things there for your children. Then. So it therefore became marital property.
She had no reason to steal it, though.
She didn't steal it. It was a gift.
It wasn't really a gift.
Well, Miss Richardson, I'm trying to explain to you, madam, you're not getting what the law is.
Okay.
That's the law. And if your son, during the course of the divorce proceeding, says, well, she took this marital property and she had no right to take the marital property, a judge will decide that. But it's not yours. You can't sue for it. You gave it away. You gave it away to them. And as between the two of them, a court will determine whose property it was, whether she cleaned out the house or whether she didn't. But it's not yours anymore. You gave it away. Let's get to the car. When did you tell your daughter-in-law that you wanted $5,000 for the car?
Before I left the home.
So that was in May of 06. Is that what you told you in May of 06? You wanted $5,000?
Husband and I discussed it, and I told him I don't feel I owe her anything for this car. I have been a personal slave to her, driven her anywhere she's asked me to go.
Well, listen to me.
Broken in
Don't speak. Just because you think that doesn't make it the law. Car's titled in her name. You took her where she had to go. You also used it for yourself when you had to go to, I don't know, bowling, Pilates, hairdresser appointment, whatever. Right. You took the car yourself. So, in exchange for that, you had a car. And what you did was you drove your mother-in-law around. When you weren't driving her around, you were using it yourself. So whether you thought that you were entitled to it or not, that's totally irrelevant. She said she wanted $5,000 for the car. You go back to Florida. When did you have a discussion with her and send her $3,000?
My husband and I discussed it, and I said all I can get is $3,000.
Where did you get the $3,000 from? Look at me. Don't look down there.
My mother obtained a loan.
When?
It would be late May, and I made the deposit
in June 20th.
Before you and your husband separated?
Yeah.
And you gave her a check in late May for the $3,000.
Well, she was gone, so we deposited the check into her bank account. And we gave her the mortgage money as well. You'll see it's $4,000.
No. That has nothing to do with it. She already told me. She wanted $5,000. You sent her $3,000. She considered it for other bills. She can't do that. Where's the title to the car?
The original title was destroyed.
And here's what I paid for the car.
Can be destroyed?
Here, ma'am.
Lost in the mail.
What?
She took my mail for 6 months. I spent $80,000 on that house.
Who's living in it?
It's empty. I can't even sell it.
Just a second. Who's living in it?
Nobody's living in it.
Why isn't he living in it?
He lives here in Michigan with me now.
Oh, well.
But I just lost.
Because if I'm down there, she makes my life miserable.
Listen to me.
$80,000.
I'm not speaking
so.
to you.
Okay.
I'm not speaking to you.
Sorry.
If your mother's out some money, get a job and make sure she's whole. Miss Richardson, you cannot take her money. That money was for the car. That's what it was for. That was before they separated, so that you went back to Michigan, right, without the car.
Right.
And she got the money from her mother. This is her car. It is not your car. Don't get in between your son and his wife if they're in the process of divorcing.
So this $80,000 that I spent, I know she got money, she kept my mail, she run my cell phone up to $1,000.
Listen to me. Listen to me. You could sue her for certain things, but you can't keep this money. And if you spent $80,000, you spent $80,000 on your son, not on your daughter-in-law. You spent $80,000 on your son because, but for your son, listen, if she came to you and you didn't know her from a hole in the wall and she wasn't married to your son, you wouldn't have spent $25 on her. You spent the money because you wanted your son to be comfortable. And if he was married to this lady, well, she's the beneficiary of that. The house isn't in her name. The house is in your name.
I'm losing that, too. So.
Well, sell it. Meanwhile, you have to sign the title to the car over to her because the car belongs to her. You accepted the money for it?
But it's not paid for.
What do you mean it's not paid for?
$3,000 isn't $5,000.
Listen to me. You said you wanted $5,000 to them before you left. There was conversations that took place between the three of you. There's no question in my mind about that. There is also no question in my mind that you accepted the $3,000 in payment for the car because you took it and you spent it. It wasn't until 3 months later when they separated that you said, well, that money was for other things. No.
So she
doesn't go that way. This is her car. And don't put yourself in the middle of these two people. You spent money. It's unfortunate. The marriage didn't work out. The marriage didn't work out, and it's over. And there were certain things that she took appliances from the house. I'm sure that there were certain things that your son took. What did you take from the house, sir? Stand up next to your mother and just answer my questions. Now that you moved back to Michigan, what did you take with you or sell?
Nothing. Because she emptied the house.
No, listen to me. She didn't empty the house.
Yeah.
She took the appliances, according to your mother.
Emptied it. My clothes, every personal belonging I had premarital. She emptied the house. I came back to an empty house. My mom blew $80,000.
Just a second. Did you take everything from the house?
Yes.
Everything.
Just a second. Shh. Don't speak. Did you take everything from the house?
Not every single thing, no.
Yes, she did.
Don't speak. What did you take from the house?
I took whatever I would need to have the kids having the same normal life they had before.
How many children do you have?
2.
How old are they?
One to be 12 and one to be 5.
Like my dad.
Don't speak. Don't speak. Where were you living? In Michigan?
When I moved out,
Where did you go?
I didn't have a home.
So where did you go?
I went to a friend's home.
Boyfriend.
And it's going to be over. Do you understand? It's going to be over. What state do you live in now?
Florida.
Which is where you lived as a marital couple?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Why did you move back to Michigan when you have 2 children in Florida?
Because she was trying to get me put in jail. She stole everything. She come into my motel room and took my pool stick, and I'm a professional pool player.
Listen to me.
After she emptied the house, took my dad's wedding band he wore for 43 years that's worth $20. It's 10 karat gold that belongs to my mother. All 9 of my pool sticks. all my clothes, 3 different cell phones that she came to my hotel room to get in my hotel room to take the stuff, and I filed a police report.
I asked you a question, sir. The question is a simple one.
It's just all the truth.
The question is
That's why I moved.
The question is a simple one.
All right.
How do you move clear across country when you have 2 children?
Because here's a lady that's trying to put me in jail and comes to where I am when I try to ignore her to steal things I have. Excuse me.
Let us sign over the car, please. I would run away from him, too.
Really?
Sign it. The car belongs to her. It's your problem how to get it, but the car belongs to her.
Well, she should owe me $1,000 for cell phones that she stole.
Then sue her for the cell phones.
Well, where am I going to do that at? I mean, she steals and took money, took my checks for 6 months and taken my money out of the bank and everything.
Give the title to the car. That's what she wants. Counterclaim is dismissed. Very unfortunate situation. You got yourself in the middle of something. You have 2 grandchildren. You should never do that, madam. When you have 2 grandchildren, listen to me. You have 2 grandchildren.
I don't see them either.
Excuse me?
I won't see them either. She's the one.
She wouldn't let her see her grandchildren when we lived together.
I'm telling you something. You're not paying attention. You're not paying attention. You have a son who I've only met for a short period of time. He's not wrapped too tight. But you're the grandmother. You're the grandmother. And if you have 2 grandchildren, I don't know if he's your only child or not, or if you have other children. If he's your only child, I sort of get it. So that these are your only 2 grandchildren. I would not have gotten into a situation with her where you end up in court. Just pay attention. Don't look at him with rose-colored glasses. You have to know who your children are. You have to be fair. You have to be dispassionate. She may not be perfect, but you have to know who your children are. You got it?
Yes.
Goodbye.
Kenneth Kip Panett claims former friend Stacy Schwartz took his car without permission and damaged it. Kenneth says Stacy not only ruined the transmission and clutch, but she also popped one of his tires.
Mr. Panett, you were at a party with the defendant. I assume she was a friend of yours, and it is your claim that she took your car without permission and wrecked it.
She didn't wreck it. She hit a curb and blew out a tire, and the transmission went out.
And Ms. Schwartz says that she had an unfortunate accident and that she might clearly be responsible for replacing a tire, but certainly not the transmission, since she had your permission and this accident was clearly not her fault.
Well, she did not have my permission.
Good. So let's go back. When was this party that you had?
A couple of months ago. It was a Friday night. It was at my house, and
listen, Mr. Panett, how old are you, sir?
23.
What do you do for a living?
I am a market analyst.
Ever been to court before, sir?
No, except for traffic tickets and...
Well, that's court. So, if you're a plaintiff and you have a claim, first thing you figure out is what date.
Yes, Your Honor.
Because the questions get harder after that, Mr. Panett. So, a couple of months ago on a Friday night isn't a date.
I believe the date was December 14th, Your Honor.
That's a date. Now, it was on December 14th, 2006. Where were you?
At my house.
Who else was there?
I don't know the exact names, but a bunch of my friends.
And what were you all doing?
Drinking, watching TV, listening to music.
Great. Having a good time. Being responsible.
Yes.
What happened next?
Well, I didn't keep track of everybody around that night. I went to bed maybe around 1 or 2, and the next morning, Stacy called me and said that my car was broken down. I said, you know, how could that be? It should be in front of my house. And she said she was in Sunrise, which is about 20 miles away.
Where do you live?
Downtown Sacramento.
Go ahead.
She said it was broken down. She explained to me that she had taken my car the night before and that it had broken down the night before and that she had spent the night and was calling me in the morning. And I was...
Spent the night where?
At one of her friend's house, I assume.
Okay.
And I explained to her that she had better get my car back to me.
What kind of car do you have?
It's a Nissan Sentra.
Year?
1997. And she said she would. We exchanged words. I was a little upset, and then I fell back asleep. I didn't get my car back until the next day. She had it towed back to my house. At first, she hadn't even told me that a tire had blown out. I did see that for myself when it came to my house. Then she explained that to me. I had not given her permission to drive the car, so I was very upset.
Okay. Don't repeat anything.
Okay.
I have other things to do. Are you finished?
She had told me that she would pay for all damages. She was very apologetic at first, and I had it diagnosed, and she refused to pay it. She says she's not responsible for that.
You had it diagnosed. What was the bill?
It was $1,500, $1,593.83. I'd originally said $1,600. It's I'd rounded when I looked at the receipt. It's actually $6.17 less than that.
Mr. Panett, how did you pay for this?
My father loaned me the money to pay for it, actually.
Did you pay for it in check or cash, sir?
I believe my father used his credit card to pay for it, and I had to pay my father back.
What's your father's name?
John Panett.
His phone number?
It's in my cell phone, I'm sorry.
Ferg, would you please get his cell phone so that we can get the father's number, please? Thank you. And he's going to verify that he paid this bill, sir?
Yes,
when I
he
call
would.
him on the phone? Good. We're going to do that in a minute.
Okay.
Now, I'll hear you, Miss Swartz.
On December 14th, I was hanging out at Kip's house, and I asked him if I could borrow his car to go over to Jessica's house.
Where does Jessica live?
A few blocks from his house.
And he said?
He said yes, he let me borrow it.
Good. So you understand, Miss Swartz,
That's a different place than she was. Excuse me, Your Honor.
You do understand, madam, that you did have limited authority to take his car to go to Jessica's house, which is a few blocks away. You understand that?
Yes. Yeah.
Now tell me what happened.
I drove over to Jessica's house and told her that I was using Kip's car, and she called me at 5 o'clock in the morning and woke me up.
At Jessica's house?
Yes. And told me she was drunk and stranded in Sunrise, so I didn't even think to call Kip and ask permission because he let me borrow his car. He knew I wasn't...
No, my dear.
He knew I wasn't going to bring it back until the morning, so I...
Darling!
Yes.
You get it now? You look as if you're smart enough to get where I'm going.
Yes, ma'am.
You went to pick up your friend in Sunrise. And how far is Sunrise from Jessica's house?
Approximately 20 miles.
20?
Miles.
Miles, not blocks. Miles. And it was coming back with her, this drunken friend of yours, that you had the accident.
Yes.
Now tell me about the accident.
I was just driving and I was coasting, so I was in neutral, and then I tried to put it into gear and it would not go into gear, and I went to park immediately and I hit the curb and popped the tire. That was probably about 5:30, 6 o'clock.
You must have hit the curb very hard.
Well, yes, it was hard enough to pop the tire, and I immediately changed the tire, and since it was about 5:30 in the morning, my friend that I picked up just walked to her house because we were about a block away, and I slept in the car and called Kip about 9 o'clock in the morning to tell him that I was going to get his car towed back to him.
Let us assume that I believe you, that Mr. Panett said that you could borrow his car to go to Jessica's house, which is a few blocks away, to stay over. When you exceeded his permission by going 20 miles away the next day, you no longer had his permission. Do you understand that?
But he knew I was going to have it till the morning.
Don't tell me what he knew. He gave you permission, according to you, to drive it a few blocks. A few blocks is not 20 miles.
I have my witness here that saw him give me permission.
I just said, don't you have your listening ears on? I said, if I believe you, he gave you permission to take it a few blocks away. Once you took it 20 miles away, you no longer had permission.
Your Honor, he lets me borrow the car all the time.
That's not true.
Just a second. Where do you think you are?
Right here.
Where is here?
In this witness chair.
And until you stand up there, what are you supposed to do?
Listen to you.
Right. Once you exceeded the scope of the permission, you no longer had permission. That's the law. Do you understand it?
Yes.
So all I have to do is deal with the issue of damages. And for that, you're going to give me John's cell phone.
Yes, ma'am. Just let me power it up.
Power it up. John Panett, this is Judge Judy Sheindlin. How are you? I'm very well, thank you. Do you have a moment for just a couple of quick questions for me? I'm here, as you know, trying a case involving your son and this young woman who took his car without permission. Are you familiar with that? Okay. Did he ever ask you for any money to help him repair this car? When was that? 3 months ago. Do you remember how much it cost you, sir? Approximately. And did you use your credit card? Did he pay you back that money? I know, I have children. Did he tell you how it happened? That he needed a new transmission? Was he driving the car? Okay. Very good. And you used a credit card? Okay, great. Thank you very much, sir. I appreciate you taking the time. Bye-bye now. What a nice father you have, sir.
Thank you, Your Honor.
And as a matter of fact, your father does remember helping you out and paying for this transmission a few months ago.
That's correct.
Do you know what he doesn't remember?
What?
He doesn't remember you paying him back.
Well, I owe him money pretty much all the time, and I am always paying him. So I'm in the process
that he
of
doesn't
paying
remember. I mean, he does remember laying this money out for you, but he doesn't remember the fact that you paid him.
I have not fully paid him back, Your Honor. I apologize.
Well, how much have you paid him, sir?
Well, I owe him a total of quite a bit more than that. So I guess if you got down to that bill, I haven't paid him any because I'm paying him for things that I owe him.
Well, you have no objection to making the check payable to your father, do you?
No, not at all.
Good. Judgment for the plaintiff in the amount of $1,593.83 to be made payable to John Panett. Thank you very much. That's all.
Nancy Savage is suing the mother of her grandson, Melissa Balding, for bail money. Nancy says Melissa and her son were arrested on drug charges.
All right, everybody listen very carefully because this is a long saga to get to a simple question. Miss Savage, I assume this is your son.
Yes, it is.
This is his girlfriend.
Yes,
ex-girlfriend.
True.
They have a child together.
True.
She doesn't have custody of the child. He doesn't have custody of the child. One of your other children has custody of the child because both of these two people were, in somebody's opinion, not capable of taking care of this child. According to your complaint, some time ago, your son was driving your car with her in the car. When did that happen?
About a year ago, a little over a year ago.
Let's have a month.
April 30th, 2004.
He's not your only child, is he?
No.
Perfect. It's a perfect example of don't put all your eggs in one basket. When they got pulled over, there were drugs in the car. I assume, Miss Savage, that they didn't belong to you.
Right.
So the two of them got hauled into court and your car was impounded. According to you, you bailed out your son and Miss Balding, and you want your bail money, which was how much?
$750.
You were to pay for the towing fees on the car and the impound fees.
The impound fees.
That she's not going to pay for because the Hulk over here was the one driving your car, right?
Yes.
And you gave him permission to drive your car, I assume. So I would suggest you get the impound and towing fees back from him. By the way, have you paid your mother back for your bail?
Yes, I have. Except for $50 of it.
What about the towing fees?
No, I haven't.
Where were the drugs found?
They were found behind the glove box, stashed.
Whose drugs were they?
They were his drugs.
Had you used drugs that day?
No.
Were you under the influence of drugs that
No.
day? Were you under the influence of alcohol that day?
That was possible.
What?
Yes, ma'am.
What time of the day was this?
Around 12 o'clock in the afternoon because I was laying out at my pool.
What time had you started drinking?
Around 12 o'clock.
He's shaking his head no. I tend to believe him. Were any charges ultimately brought against you?
Yes, ma'am.
For what?
That I'm not quite sure about them, but I have this paper right here stating that it was all dropped and dismissed.
Let me see that, please.
I have on the bail slip that I got her what her charges were.
Can I see that, please?
And she has one more charge than my son was, which I believe is being under the influence. She admitted to the police that she had taken somas.
What is that?
It's a muscle relaxer. Not that day, but previous.
Now tell me about the call you received, Miss Savage, from the defendant about the bail.
First of all, one of their friends notified me that their car had been pulled over, so I went to where it was because it was less than a mile from my house. And I asked the officer if I could get my car, and he said no, there were drugs involved, and one of them was under the influence, and so they were going to impound it. So I asked him where my grandchild was, and the officer went over and asked Melissa, and she told him it was at her apartment. So I told him I would take responsibility and go get Brian and have him stay with me.
Who was watching him?
Some of their friends.
Go ahead.
So I went and brought my grandson home, and I was trying to calm him and everything. He was very upset.
How old is he?
2.5.
Go ahead.
I told him that Mommy and Daddy were having car problems, and when their car was fixed, that they would come and get him, and he told me that I should take him to where they were. So Melissa started calling. The first call, she was like, you have to get me out of here. I can't stay in here. You need to get me out. I'll do anything. Whatever it is, I'll pay you back. Just get me out. And that was the first of one of many calls. I probably got between 15 and 20 calls that night, and every time she called, she woke my grandson up. And
what about your son?
He called me once.
Did you go and bail him out?
I bailed both of them out.
No. He called you once?
Once.
When did you bail him out?
Steve got released around 2 o'clock that afternoon, and Melissa got released 8:30, 9 o'clock that morning because there was a woman in jail that Melissa had identified for another crime.
Oh, just a second. This incident happened at 12 noon.
No, the incident happened at like 10 o'clock that night that they were pulled over.
Yes. Oh, so she had been drinking from 12 noon until 10 o'clock at night, according to her. Oh, I didn't understand that. Now I understand. Okay, and during that whole time, she called you numerous times.
She called me about 15 to 20 times, and she told me that they wanted to test her for drugs and she wasn't going to give them a urine sample, and that when she had to go to the bathroom that she would have the girls in the waiting cell stand around her so they didn't know that she was urinating.
Step up. What happened to your case?
My case was dropped before hers was.
What kind of drugs were found in the car?
Marijuana, pills, and methamphetamines.
Whose were they?
Hers.
That's interesting. Not yours.
The marijuana was mine. I admitted to the cop when we were stopped. He asked if there were any drugs in the vehicle, and the marijuana was in my pocket. And I handed that to him, and he found the other drugs when he asked for my license and registration. When she opened the glove box door, he saw a container that everything else was in.
Who are you?
Her mother.
Step up. Why do you think your daughter didn't call you to bail her out?
Because I taught her not to call me and bail any of my children out until they have gone to their first preliminary hearing.
She was in Ohio.
Just a second.
They'll possibly lower the bail or drop the
What's your last name?
Daly.
Miss Daly, how many children do you have that have been arrested?
Oh, this one.
So when you said you've taught all your children not to call you until after they had had their first bail hearing, you were really referring just to her?
No, I raised 4 daughters as a single parent.
Yes.
And I worked in law enforcement for 30 years.
Yes.
And I just informed them that if they got into a situation where they ended up in jail, I would hope this wouldn't happen, but I just wanted to make sure that they knew what to do.
How many years have you spent in law enforcement?
All told, 20.
Between us, we have more than a half a century in law enforcement, Miss Daly. How many children do you have?
4.
Between us, we have 9 children. Did you ever have a conversation and tell your children, if you ever get arrested, make sure you wait until your first bail hearing because your bail will probably be lowered? Do you remember having that conversation when you told them about, don't talk to strangers, don't go near people's vans? You ever remember having that conversation with your 4 children?
Negative.
Me neither. So you want to go through this one more time with me? Because unless you're kooky, because I never heard of a mother, even in law enforcement, sitting her children down and saying, listen, never talk to strangers, be home at midnight, don't give any strangers your phone number. And if you ever get arrested, I want you to wait until your first bail hearing before you call me, because your bail may be reduced. Were you happy to get out of jail?
Yes, ma'am.
Pay her the money. Judgment for the plaintiff in the amount of $750. That's all.
Parties are excused. You may step out. Janelle Monáe is suing her ex-boyfriend, Christopher Cook, for rent, utility bills, and a broken door. Christopher says Janelle is holding his belongings hostage.
Miss Monáe, this is your complaint. You and Mr. Cook hooked up and lived together for a period of time.
Right.
You leased an apartment together. The understanding was that each of you expenses on the apartment. Shortly after you moved in, he stopped working. Stayed home, according to you, 7 months. He did not pay his share of the rent or utilities.
Right.
You want it. What kind of job did you lose, sir?
When I moved in with Janelle, I was working as a caretaker for a friend of mine who needed someone to take care of him, and I had free room and board with the job. So when she asked me to do that, I was walking away from free room and board plus a small salary to move in with her. She told me that from the word go, there was no concerns about money, that I was to feel no burden about this. The whole gig she's pulling here is just about her wanting to get a payday, since she went through her money like she was a queen of town and going and taking everybody out all over the place.
You know something, Mr. Cook? My problem is with a 37-year-old man who, for whatever reason, decides to live off a stranger. I don't understand that kind of mentality. I see it all the time. What
Who said I was
would
going to live off a stranger?
inspire a person who's 37 years old
Right.
to think that there is some sort of an entitlement for them to, according to you, said, I did a lot of the chores. I did the cooking. I cleaned up. I
After
took
she had
care of myself.
After gastric bypass surgery, she needed me to do basically everything.
You said to me, sir,
It took
that
her-
I'm speaking, that she needed help for a month. Understood. That turned into 7 months when you did nothing.
3 months, she was unable to do for herself. I took care of everything. Then I got another job back at a place I used to work before. She proceeded to help me lose the job, basically, by wanting to be up all night with her friends out in the living room while I was trying to go to sleep in the bedroom. She did nothing to try and help. So I ended up losing the job after about a month in time. And it took another month and a half before I got another job. All I wanted from her was to provide an environment where we could both live together. I could go back to work. She was conducive to that and contribute to the home.
Miss Monáe, you sold his property. When he left certain property in your house.
He had next to nothing when
I don't care if he had next to nothing. When he moved in, a lot of the stuff was purchased. And I guarantee you, if I got down to it with you, it would have been purchased for him.
Right.
The fact that you don't love him anymore and that he left doesn't mean that you get to take back the things that you bought him.
Right.
So not only did you take them back, but there were certain things that you sold. What did you sell?
A computer and a toolbox.
What kind of computer?
It was an old Dell that was built by Mr. Cook.
Well, if it was built by him, then it wasn't
Wouldn't be a
yours.
Dell. Right.
Why did you sell it?
Because I needed money to pay the rent.
How much did you sell it for?
$100.
That's not why you sold it. I don't even believe that you sold it. Who'd you sell it to?
A friend of mine.
Whose name is?
Steve.
Uh-huh. Steve what?
Steve.
And how do you know him?
He's a mutual friend of ours.
You know him?
I know him, yes, Your Honor.
You know if he bought your computer?
I know he didn't buy my computer.
You know he did not. How do you know, Mr. Cook, that Mr. Peterson did not buy the computer?
Because I confronted him on the very issue. He did not have my computer, Your Honor.
When did you confront him?
After I was aware of the fact that my computer was no longer there, along with 3 toolboxes, not one, and all various other possessions that were mine long before our relationship ever began.
Who did you sell the toolboxes to?
He has the toolboxes.
That's a lie, Your Honor.
You told me that you sold them in your complaint.
I got them back after that because he wanted them back. So I felt bad that I had sold them, and I bought them back from the person that I sold them to.
No.
Yes, I most certainly did.
Fine. Who did you sell them to?
I sold them to a friend of mine whose name is Francisco. He bought them for $60, and I bought them back.
Wouldn't pay for
Can
the
I
clothes
ask
on
you
one
this
floor.
question, Miss Monáe?
Yes.
As for his personal belongings, when Christopher left home, and the means of recouping some of my losses and supporting myself, I had to sell his tools. That's what you wrote in your complaint. No, I bought them back because I felt badly. Why wouldn't you tell me that you purchased them back and gave them back to him?
Because I just recently did this. Just last week.
You mean after this lawsuit, or you just recently did it?
Yes.
All right. Well, you had an opportunity today to review your complaint and to sign it.
Right.
Today, nowhere did you modify this complaint, right?
Right.
I mean, do you think that there's something wrong with me? They don't
No.
keep me here because I'm good looking. You lived rent-free for how long?
Rent-free is
Rent-free.
is there not a exchange of me doing activities or work for her that's also...
No. No.
That was the
There was-
arrangement we had.
I don't believe that.
That was the arrangement we had, Your
I
Honor.
don't believe it.
I'm telling you that's what it was. whether
I
you
don't
believe
care
it or
what
not.
you're telling me, sir. I don't believe a 37-year-old
She had
man. I'm
gastric bypass.
speaking with any kind of character says, you take care of me, I'm going to do the cooking.
It wasn't. She had gastric bypass surgery.
That's fine. Then if you love her and you want to help take care of her, you do that. For a week, 2 weeks, a month, as long as she needs you to help her take care of her, that's what you do if you love somebody. But you don't do it as a livelihood. I'm speaking, sir. You lived there not a month, not 2 months, not 3 months. You lived there 7 months. And in 7 months, you didn't pay any rent. Consider that your tools. You got it? But you're not getting any rent money from him, madam, because he had no right to sell his property.
Right.
So whatever
Right.
money that you got for his property, put it towards the rent.
Okay.
Sounds to me like the two of you deserve each other. Your case is dismissed. Yours too. Goodbye.
Kenny Loud says neighbors Keith and Tammy Cavanis owe for the return of 2 dirt bikes. The defendants are countersuing for harassment and defamation of character.
Miss Loud, you and the defendant were neighbors. You purchased 2 dirt bikes at some point, and then according to your complaint, you and your husband separated. You couldn't maintain the payments on the bikes, so you sold them to your neighbors.
Yes, ma'am.
And they acknowledged that you did in fact sell them to them, and the price for the 2 bikes was, I believe, $1,800. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
You made only $300 worth of payments, is that right?
Yes,
3
ma'am.
payments of $100 each.
Yes, ma'am.
And your last payment was in February?
Yes, ma'am.
She wants her money. Do you have a defense?
We attempted to make the payment, and she refused it.
Show me.
Here's the return. That's the receipt for the money, or the certified letter, and that's where they refused it and sent it back. We called her.
March 23rd. When was your payment due?
On the 15th.
Of
we
what?
called her on March 15th. So she sent us a text on March 14th, and we had gone out of town and we had forgotten about it. So we called her and told her we were out of town and asked if it would be okay if we paid it on the 20th when we returned. And if not, my nephew had access to our funds, and he could bring it down to her right then because it's only a few houses down. And she said, no, it's okay, wait when you return on the 20th. And then she went on, started talking about other issues.
Your Honor.
Go ahead.
Okay, and when they were out of town, they did not call me. I called them on Sunday. And
Sunday, what day?
Sunday was March 15th, I believe. And they told me at that point that they were out of town and that their nephew could pay me the money. I had talked to their nephew during the week. He did not mention anything about the money, and neither did I, because in February...
Why didn't you pick this up? Did you get this certified
I wasn't
mail?
at home. I had somebody staying with me due to the threats that he had said to me
Just a second.
when I went to collect the money March 20th.
Hold on. I don't understand this. This is addressed to you. This is addressed to you. This
I may have
envelope
brought the wrong.
and this name is addressed to you.
I'm sorry, if the receipt that...
Don't show me the receipt. That you filled out.
I brought the wrong envelope.
That you filled out, madam. This is addressed to you.
I know, I'm sorry, Your Honor, I brought the wrong envelope.
Well, that's not my problem.
I know it. I messed up. But
It's very messed up. It's very messed
the
up.
thing is, she came to our
useless.
house and she refused on the 20th when we
Doesn't make any
returned, and she
difference.
refused.
Oh, you have no defense for not paying up for the bikes. What's your defense?
The defense that she came to our house on the 20th. When we returned, we told her we were going to pay on the 20th. She was not home. She showed up at our home intoxicated, demanded the dirt bikes back. And we said, no, Kenny, you said that it would be okay when we returned on the 20th that we would pay you. He was there. He was a witness and saw that she refused.
I want to know today, as you stand here, what your defense is. Right now, you have the 2 dirt bikes.
We had the cash to give to her. We tried
Right
to give it to her.
now,
She
you
refused it.
have the 2 dirt bikes.
The deal was that I lost a job, so we did not have to pay on the 15th. The deal was that we
The
could
contract
pay.
does say the 15th, but she said she'd work with us.
She would work with us.
I want to know, you're standing here today, what is your defense for not paying her for the merchandise that you have?
That she would not take the payment when we tried to
Well,
take
what
it
do
to
you
her.
think she's doing here? To check out my makeup?
She wanted the bikes. She wanted the bikes back.
She wanted the
Her
bikes back.
ex-husband returned, and he wanted the bikes back. She told us
I
in
didn't-
February
I
he
don't-
wanted the bikes
Hey,
back.
I mean, thick. Are you people just thick?
We offered her the payment on the 15th.
What defense do you have today for keeping the bikes and not paying for them? The fact that you're annoyed?
We attempted. We had the money. We want to pay him. We want to pay her. We wanted to pay it.
Oh, so
And
you
she
want to
refused
finish?
it. Yes, we wanted to make every payment on time. We wanted to make the payments early.
Fine. Well, you didn't make your payment on time. All right. So right now they owe you $1,500 on the dirt bikes.
On the dirt bikes.
What?
On the dirt bikes, I want the return of the dirt bikes. I don't want the money. I want the dirt bikes because
That's not the deal. You're getting your $1,500 back. I don't care what you want. You made the deal. Now, you have some other repossession fees. I want you to show me where you paid a bill for repossessing the dirt bikes.
I have not paid anything yet.
Good. Then you don't get that.
I have an invoice.
Then you don't get it.
Even with the invoice saying, because I still have to pay it.
No, I don't want it. But I'm curious, when did you hire somebody to repossess the bikes?
I think it was around April 9th.
You have that on the invoice?
I don't know. I think the invoice is just dated the day that they sent it to me. June 1st is the date of it.
No, not interested. Take it, throw it in the garbage. They didn't get the property.
But I still have to pay the money.
That's your problem, if you're going to pay the money, and I don't think you are. So far, they owe you $1,500. Now, you want to get to the last part of your lawsuit, which is defamation of character.
Yes, ma'am. I was the assistant leader in a Girl Scout troop. She was the leader, and both of our daughters were in it. And on Friday, March 20th, is when I went over there to get the dirt bikes. And then Saturday is when she sent an email to all of the parents, to the girls in the Girl Scout troop, saying that I was no longer going to be the assistant leader.
Let me see.
I had not resigned.
I want to see what she says in it.
I have mine also if you want to compare the two.
This is not defamation. She says, as some of you know, I am needing an assistant to help me with the troop. Kenny no longer will be the assistant, so I need help ASAP. She doesn't say anything else about you.
I was forced out of the group by her when I had sent.
I don't care.
I talked to the.
That's not defamation. Show me something that indicates that she defamed you in some way, madam.
Okay, because of that email, I found out about that email, and I had called corporate Girl Scouts, and then they came in, and at that point she had said, well...
Don't tell me what you said.
She said it to...
they owe you $1,500. Now I'm going to entertain, in 30 seconds or less, your counterclaim.
She kept calling counsel over and over again. They were just...
Don't tell me what they were just...
And she told them that I...
You can't tell me what she told them. That's hearsay.
I have the letter from the council.
I don't
she
care
told
if
them
you
that
have
I
a
stole
letter.
money.
Just a second. I don't care if you have a letter from counsel. I don't read letters from counsel. Letters from counsel are hearsay. You have anything that she wrote?
Oh, I have the letter that she sent
to
all the girls. Well, she sent it to counsel to send it to the girls, and saying that I told them stuff, which I didn't. And then the letter from counsel says that she had me investigated for stealing money.
I don't care. That's hearsay. Do you understand?
That she had me investigated for stealing money?
That's hearsay. This is not defamation. She's saying that I understand that Tammy Cavan has communicated with you by email or in person about a week and a half ago that I had quit the troop. That's not what she said at all in her email to the troop that you gave me. She just said I will be needing a new assistant and Kerry will no longer be. She didn't say you quit. Show me where it says you quit.
I have the resignation letter.
I don't have it.
I didn't ask you anything.
Okay. Do you still have that email? You
have that?
You still have it. Kenny will no longer be the assistant
leader. That's what
leader.
it says. She will no longer be. She doesn't say you quit. And it's all a matter of semantics anyway. It's nonsense, ladies. You owe her $1,500 for the dirt bikes that you have. Your counterclaim's dismissed. That's all.
Parties are excused. You may step out.
Stacy Levine says ex-boyfriend Rory Rodriguez owes for a cell phone bill and the cost of a plane ticket. Rory claims Stacy knew he wouldn't be able to pay her back.
Miss Levine, this used to be your boyfriend, and according to your complaint, he owes you for a plane ticket and for a cell phone bill.
Yes.
Mr. Rodriguez says the cell phone was your idea in order to keep in touch with him, and he never used the plane ticket.
Yes.
How long did this romance go on? For how many months?
About 8 months.
And when did you get involved with his cell phone business?
In July of '06.
How long had you known him?
7 months.
So you got involved in his cell phone business a month before you broke up?
Correct.
Tell me how that came about.
He had been complaining he had wanted a new phone, and he was on his father's plan. His father would not allow him to get a new phone, and we had discussed getting him a new phone with a different carrier so that we could talk with free minutes. Also, we had a verbal agreement that if I bought him a new phone, he would pay me back as soon as he got his check that month in July.
Where were you working?
I was a nanny. I was working as a nanny.
And what was he doing?
Nothing.
Well, when was he supposed to pay you for the cell phone?
Well, he said he was getting another check in July from the school district.
What kind of work does he do for the school district?
He was a campus supervisor.
When was the bill that you claim he owes you? Was it a bill or was it the actual cell phone that he
There's
owes you?
two. I paid for the cell phone in July, and then there was also a bill that has accrued since we started the phone.
How much was the phone itself?
$229.30.
And how much was the bill?
The bill now is $724.38.
For how many months?
That was the last statement I got was in March of this last year.
Why didn't you just cut off the phone?
I did end up shutting off the phone. That was after he racked up all of the charges. He had promised to pay the bill every month. I had set up the bill to go to his address. His name was on it as well. My name was just used for credit purposes. So he got the statement every single month in the mail to his address, and he told me he was paying it.
You mean after you broke up?
Yes. Well, when I set up the phone in July, he
said he would pay it, but this $724 isn't for 1 month or 2 months, and according to you, you broke up in August.
We did break up in August, and I paid the first bill in September, and then...
You did? Why?
Because he had called me. I was out of town. He called me and told me he needed the bill paid, and I didn't want it to go into collections at that time, so I did pay it over the phone.
And what about the next month's bill?
He told me he paid it. I was on the phone with Verizon. He said I sent a check.
Let's talk about the cell phone. Get the plane ticket in a second. Talk.
She knew that I was out of work. Working for the school district, it's a 10.5-month job.
Well, then that's what you do for a living. You work for a school district that's a 10.5-month job.
Right. And she was well aware.
Don't tell me what she was aware of, sir. I want to hear your explanation of needing a new telephone.
I did not need a new telephone. I was perfectly fine with the one that I had underneath my father's plan. The only reason that she wanted me to have the cell phone was so that we could talk for free. And we could text message for free.
Okay, so as one of your famous, fabulous 5 friends? Or
something along those lines, yeah.
I don't do that. I don't have 5 people that I want to speak to that often. Let's discount the phone for a second, Mr. Rodriguez. What about your cell phone bill? Why didn't you pay that?
She
what?
I had no money. I was out of work. I wasn't out of work, but I wasn't working.
Well, get a job, sir.
I had a job.
Then don't talk on a cell phone.
We broke up in August, and after August, the phone was never used.
Oh, show me. Can I see a bill if that's true? If just after August, is that what you're telling me?
The phone, once we broke up, the phone was...
That's the bill.
No, all I want to know is, you're saying to me, once you broke up in August, the phone was never used.
Correct.
He did not rack up $500 in a month.
Oh, no. I need the bills from September, October, November. This doesn't tell me anything, madam.
It says what the charges are.
For what month?
For all of them. The phone wasn't shut off until December.
I understand that the phone wasn't shut off until December, but there's a factual dispute. If he says that he did not use the phone after you broke up, then some credence to his story that you decided to get this phone so that the two of you could either chat or text message each other for nothing. One phone bill doesn't do it for me. Do you understand?
I understand that, yes.
Do you have the others with you?
I do not have any other phone bills with me.
Here, give this back to her for now.
That was the only way I was able to get a hold of him was his cell phone. So I did talk to him on the cell phone.
That's not my statement to you, madam. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yes.
Fine. So, since you didn't bring that with you, I'm going to dismiss the cell phone portion of your claim without prejudice. You can certainly sue him for that amount of money when you have the appropriate documents to back up your story. You don't have them today. Now let's get to the plane ticket. When was the plane ticket purchased?
July of '06.
July what?
I believe it was the 14th.
And when did you officially break up with him?
The last week of August.
When was this trip supposed to take place?
We were supposed to leave September 1st, and we broke up the very week before.
9/1. And where were you going?
We were going to Pennsylvania and Cleveland.
For what?
Pennsylvania to visit family, Cleveland to the Cleveland Clinic, and then to the Canton to the Football Hall of Fame.
When did you purchase the ticket?
July 14th of '06.
Is that correct?
I'm not sure what the date was.
Well, I'm sure she has documents showing when she purchased the ticket and when you were supposed to leave.
I've never had, in my possession, I've never had the ticket, so I
It
don't
doesn't
know
make any
when she
difference.
bought it.
Because what I found interesting was you said that the reason you were going to Pennsylvania is to attend her grandfather's funeral. That's what you say. And I said to myself, well, how do you plan for something like that 2-3 weeks in advance? You know,
No.
I don't know whether her grandfather is alive or not, but you don't...
Her grandfather did pass away.
Yes.
On the trip that we were supposed to go to, her grandfather did pass away.
But he did not pass away.
Shh. I have no idea what you just said to me.
Her grandfather passed away on the trip that we were that we were supposed to go to.
But you hadn't planned on going there for his funeral unless he had some sort of premonition that he was going, sir.
We did, though, ma'am. It was something that was known for a while that
he was going to die while you were there?
Not while we were there, but
you know,
you
sound ridiculous. You know, you sound ridiculous. You mean she wanted to go visit her grandfather because he was sick?
Right.
That's not what you said here. You said that you planned to go to Pennsylvania to attend her grandfather's funeral.
Right.
He's not too swift. Okay, tell me about the plane ticket.
We were going to go visit family in Pennsylvania and then move on to Cleveland. He was going to accompany me and my mother. My mother actually purchased the tickets and spoke with Rory on the phone. And
Perfect. Can you step up? Your last name is?
Randall.
Miss Randall, tell me about the conversation you had with Mr. Rodriguez about this plane ticket.
On the day that we were purchasing the tickets, I spoke with him on the phone, and he told me he would reimburse Stacy for the airfare. And at the same time, we opened up the airline's frequent flyer mileage account for him, set that up, and it was my clear understanding from him during that conversation.
I don't want to hear your clear understanding.
Sorry.
I want to hear what he said to you.
He said he would reimburse Stacy for the cost of the airline ticket.
And then what happened? Thank you.
We broke up.
Yes.
And there was no reason for me to go on a trip with him if we weren't together.
Absolutely right, sir.
And at the same time as
was the ticket refundable?
It was non-refundable. I tried transferring it into my name so that I could use it. I was not able to do that. I told him that as soon as I knew that. I said, here's the ticket. You know, you can use it for up to a year later. Did not give it to him because he had not paid for it. And he still has until July 14th of this year to use it.
Did you have that discussion with him?
Yes, I did.
Do you remember that discussion when she said it's non-transferable, but you can use it for up to a year?
Yes.
Well, then you have to pay for it.
When we had talked originally about buying this ticket, I told her, just as a cell phone, I did not have money because
I believe her mother that her mother had the discussion with you, sir.
And I
believe her mother. I do not believe you that you didn't have that discussion with her mother.
I'm not saying that I didn't have the discussion with her mother, but what I'm saying is that I was out of work.
I don't care whether you were out of work.
And I let them know that I couldn't pay them immediately.
That's a different story. The word is immediately, sir. You
And
don't intend to be unemployed forever.
When we had broken up, so there was no reason for me to even go on a trip with them.
Of course not, sir, but the ticket is non-refundable. I want you to try to expand your brain a little bit, Mr. Rodriguez. The fact that you broke up and you had non-refundable ticket, let's say instead of going to Pennsylvania, you were going with her to Cancun, Mexico, and you purchased 2 non-refundable tickets. She put it on her credit card. You broke up. There's no question. You said, listen, we're not going on this trip. She's not going to go alone. I'm not going to go alone. But the airline says to you, and they say to you, listen, if you can't back, but you can reschedule within the next 6 months. She put it on her credit card. Do you think you're responsible to pay her for those tickets?
No.
You're wrong. You are. You have an opportunity to use the tickets, but you can't say, I'm not going to touch those tickets. You promised the mother that you were going to pay her back for the tickets. You had an opportunity to use them for a year. You should have used them. And I suggest you get your behind into gear because you still have a couple of days to use them. Figure out where you want to go. If you want to go to the Hall of Fame, that's a great place to go for a weekend. How much were the tickets?
$331.
Judgment for the plaintiff in the amount of $331. With regard to the cell phone bill, you bring the right proof. Either I'll entertain your application or another court of competent jurisdiction will do that. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Goodbye. Have a happy life.
Eve Dettenheim is suing her sister, Carol Dettenheim, for damaging her car when she ran into a deer Carol says she offered her sister a portion of the deer meat as payment.
Ms. Dettenheim, this is your sister.
Yes, ma'am.
According to your complaint, she took your car. Your neighbors?
Yes.
She took your car, you say without permission, had an accident, you want her to pay for the damage to your car.
Yes.
Your sister says she really had your permission because she used to borrow the car all the time. You left the back door open, she grabbed the keys, she needed some diapers or something, she wanted to go to the store. There was an accident, it was unavoidable, she hit a deer, damaged the car, and her defense is you should have had better insurance. Is that your defense?
I thought she had full coverage.
What made you think that?
I just didn't think.
You didn't think? Who do you rely on to do your thinking?
I just use it all the time, and she wasn't home, so I went over there to get the key and went, and the deer just jumped out in front of me.
Was the deer hurt?
Oh, it died.
Did you wait for somebody to come and take the carcass away?
No, I put pine straw over it and took the antler and went and got it later.
Went and got what later?
The deer.
What'd you do with it?
Ate it.
Is that true?
Yes, ma'am, and she even offered me some, but I'm not having rigor mortis stew. I know. It did not have rigor mortis, so I went back. That is just sick.
Can I see pictures of your car, please?
Yes, ma'am.
Where do you live, Miss Dettenheim?
Louisiana.
Where in Louisiana?
Hainesville.
How long have you and your sister been neighbors?
For 1 year.
Who moved close to whom?
She moved close to me.
You have an estimate to fix this car?
Yes, ma'am.
I'd like to see it, please. Are you angry with your sister?
A little bit. I feel like she needs to own up to the responsibility that she did damage my car and make what is wrong right.
So, what do you think?
Well, that night when I told her about the wreck, I thought it was just a headlight. And, you know, we talked about it and looked at everything. But then the next morning, she come over there just hollering at me, banging on my door, telling me how I owed her and all this. And I've helped her with a lot of stuff in the past and has made my life. I had to move because, I mean, I still have the house, but I can't stay with her. She'll do stuff like rev up her engine in the morning, trying to wake up my son and stuff, trying to make my life hard, and it's become an issue. It's like the Hatfield McCoys or something. So,
do you work?
No, ma'am.
How do you support yourself?
My boyfriend.
Does he live with you?
Well, I'm staying with him now, just because she's hard to be next to.
Well, when's the last time you were employed?
I'm a student right now. It's been almost a year. I've been a stay-at-home mom.
A student of what?
I'm going to be a bail bondsman.
And how often do you go to school for that?
Right now, it's just a little course right now.
So why don't you work?
Because...
Well, you have to because you owe your sister $1,300.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting to have to owe $1,300.
Judgment for the plaintiff for the amount of $1,300. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Go back to Louisiana.